877-3647.
This is Gary Rima, the voice of the UNI Panthers, and you can listen to exciting Panther sports right here on the voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400, KVFD.
President Trump is very healthy. Lisa Brady, Fox News. That reassurance from senior advisor Kellyanne Conway after the first case of coronavirus at the White House. One of the president's personal valets, a Navy service member. Both the president and vice president continue to test negative. There's been some criticism of President Trump saying we need to be warriors as the country reopens.
The president often uses the word warriors to describe people who are hardy and who are committed and who are driven, in this case, to helping to reopen the economy, to feed their own families, to support their own small businesses.
But New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says public health also has to be protected.
I mean, this is not a situation where you can go to the American people and say, okay, how many lives are you willing to lose to reopen the economy?
He's considering a partial reopening in parts of the state after his latest shutdown order expires next week. A federal judge says Massachusetts has to let gun stores reopen.
Republican Governor Charlie Baker ruled gun shops in Massachusetts to be non-essential businesses and had to shut down. A federal court has reversed that decision. Judge Douglas Woodlock in his ruling said Baker imposed an improper burden on the constitutional rights of those who want to purchase guns. Potential gun buyers joined the Second Amendment Foundation in suing the state for infringing on the ability to defend themselves. The judge also directed the state to allow the gun shops to open this Saturday with social distancing rules in effect. State lawyers say they may appeal.
Fox's Gernal Scott. A bombshell in the aftermath of the Russia probe. The Justice Department plans to drop the criminal case against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. This follows word that the lead prosecutor was withdrawing from the case after recent revelations of a possible effort by FBI agents to entrap Flynn. America is listening to Fox News.
From nurses to truck drivers, doctors to grocery clerks, the front lines in today's crisis are filled with brave actions every day. And you can do your part by completing the 2020 census. This simple effort online, by phone, or by mail will help impact the next 10 years of healthcare, schools, and roads. All of our first responders need your response. So go to 2020census.gov today. Shape your future. Start here at 2020census.gov. Paid for by U.S. Census Bureau.
I'm giving Jeb's basement renovations 1 star. He kept asking me what's behind the walls down there. I'm like, why? What do you know?
No matter how hard you work for your small business, online reviewers will find something to complain about.
And then he's like, you can trust me with the job. And I'm all like, trust?
And while Progressive can't save you from these trolls, we can help you save money on commercial, auto, and business insurance.
Yeah, he charged me less than he said he would, which is lying.
Get a quote online today at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliated and third-party insurers.
Another 3 million Americans filing first-time claims for jobless benefits, bringing the 7-week total to more than 33 million out of work. Britain's economy getting hammered, too.
The Bank of England announcing today the economic slump in the UK following the coronavirus pandemic and the subsequent lockdown could be the biggest in over 300 years. Worse than the 2008 recession, even worse than the Great Depression. The economy here is set to shrink by 25% in the second quarter of this year. Unemployment could double to 9%. Still, as sharp as this downturn is in Britain, the hope is the recovery could be equally dramatic. According to bank officials, the economy could come back as much as 15% next year. That is, if COVID-19 doesn't make a comeback. In London, Greg Palcon, Fox News.
All passengers on Amtrak will be required to wear facial coverings beginning next Monday. The railroad just releasing a statement. And a bit of sports news for racing fans. IndyCar gets the green light to start its delayed season next month in Texas. They'll open in a night race with no spectators. A Catholic bishop resigns in Cincinnati over rape allegations against a priest.
Auxiliary Bishop Joseph R. Binzer's resignation is over not going to superiors with concerns about a priest now charged with raping a boy in the 80s and 90s. Father Jeffrey Drew is scheduled to go on trial in October. He's pleaded not guilty. The accusations are from before he became a priest. Father Binzer will remain a priest in the diocese. He's from Cincinnati and says in a statement, "I'm deeply sorry for my role in addressing the concerns raised about Father Drew, which has had a negative impact on the trust and faith of the people of the Archdiocese of Cincinnati." Chris Foster, Fox News.
An hour to the close on Wall Street, a rally continues. The Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ have all been up over 1%. I'm Lisa Brady, and this is Fox News.
From the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom, I'm Rob Jones. J-Mars Drive-In here in Fort Dodge has closed for this week. Owner Jerry Jordison has confirmed the closure is due to an employee who tested positive for COVID-19. Jordison says the last time the employee was in the restaurant was last Friday, and the employee had limited contact with other employees. As a preemptive measure, Jordison requested that all employees who had contact with the person be tested. The results of those tests are pending and should come back later this week. Jordison praised the work of local health officials who granted his request to have his employees tested. Jordison says the restaurant will remain closed the rest of this week with plans to reopen on Monday, and he says the restaurant will be thoroughly disinfected prior to reopening. A Waterloo man was arrested Wednesday on out-of-state warrants that charge him with the murder of 3 women nearly 30 years ago. Radio Iowa's Elwin Huffman with more.
Authorities accused 58-year-old Clark Baldwin of murdering 2 women in Wyoming in 1992 and a third in Tennessee in 1991. Investigators say they linked the former long-haul truck driver to the crimes after taking Baldwin's DNA from his garbage and from a shopping cart he used at a Waterloo Walmart. According to court records, the bodies of the 3 women, 2 of whom were pregnant, were all discovered either in a ditch or remote areas near interstate highways. Baldwin is being held in the Blackhawk County Jail awaiting extradition to Wyoming, where he'll be tried first. I'm Elwin Huffman, Radio Iowa, Waterloo.
28-year-old Moreland resident Tanner Lowe was sentenced to over 6 years in federal prison Wednesday for illegal possession of firearms on multiple occasions. Lowe received the sentence after pleading guilty in December to possession of a firearm by a felon. He was sentenced to 77 months in federal prison in U.S. District Court in Sioux City. There is no parole in the federal system, and Lowe will have to serve a 3-year term of supervised release after his prison sentence. He is currently in the custody of the U.S. Marshals until he's transported to federal prison. Governor Kim Reynolds has signed a proclamation allowing campgrounds, drive-in movie theaters, tanning facilities, and medical spas to reopen tomorrow. Radio Iowa's O.K. Henderson has more.
Iowa dentists will be able to perform routine procedures if their office has enough masks and other personal protective equipment. Last Friday, restaurants and other businesses were allowed to reopen in 77 Iowa counties. Social and fraternal clubs in those counties may reopen this Friday to serve food and beverages, but at 50% capacity. In the other 22 counties, fitness centers can start taking appointments and let one person in at a time to work out. Malls and other retail businesses can reopen at half capacity, too. However, restaurants in the 22 county zone must remain closed. Radio Iowa, I'm O.K. Henderson.
Webster County Auditor Doreen Pliner has announced that there is in-person absentee voting at a new location this year. Due to the construction at the courthouse, the voting has been moved to the DHS building at 330 First Avenue North here in Fort Dodge. This absentee precinct will be open from 8 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. weekdays for absentee voting for the June 2nd primary election. Absentee ballots for the primary election can be cast at the DHS building through 4:30 p.m. on June 1st. If you have received an absentee ballot by mail and wish to return them in person, they can be returned in the drop box at the Webster County Courthouse main lobby, 701 Central Avenue here in Fort Dodge. Absentee ballots returned by mail must be postmarked by midnight on June 1st. That's your Alpha Media News Update from the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom. I'm Rob Jones.
Here's the AM 1400 KVFD weatherology forecast. We'll see a few spotty rain showers possible late this afternoon. Partial sunshine develops and a high into the mid-60s. West winds around 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tonight, a chance for some rain showers here, cloudy skies, and a low near 35. By Friday, sunshine and breezy, high around 54 degrees. Saturday, chance for rain late and a high of 63. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 61.
Time's running out to win $5,000 a week for life from Publishers Clearinghouse. Enter now at PCH.com and you could win $5,000 a week, week after week, for life. Don't miss your chance to win because $5,000 a week for life is ready to be awarded on June 30th. Enter at PCH.com before it's too late. That's PCH.com. Better hurry if you want the next big winner to be you. Enter now at PCH.com. Entries due 6/25. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited.
If you want a herbicide that's effective on weeds in your cornfield and cost-effective for your bottom line, look no further than Halex GT. It delivers broad-spectrum weed control to keep even the toughest weeds at bay. Plus, Halex GT comes in a high-quality formulation and offers the flexibility to apply it up to a 30-inch crop height. See your Syngenta retailer to start controlling weeds today with Halex GT. Always read and follow label instructions.
I've always wanted to learn another language, but every time I try, it never sticks. So I decided to give Babbel a try, and I really like the teaching method of the app. I started with the beginner lesson on Babbel, and it starts with simple words and phrases. And soon, you're putting those words into a conversation. Each lesson takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and they're all really different, which keeps things interesting. The app is really smart. It actually keeps track of the words I'm struggling with, so I can practice them and get better. I chose Babbel because it was created by real language teachers. They built it around real life, how people actually communicate, and what they care about. I can't wait to use my new language skills in the real world. Dos cervezas, por favor.
With Babbel, get conversational in Spanish, French, German, and more. It just takes 10 to 15 minutes a day. Now try Babbel free. Just go to Babbel.com or download the Babbel app and start learning a new language today. That's Babbel.com, Babbel.com.
Hahn Roofing takes pride in adapting to the needs of our customers. That's why we have implemented a no-contact, free estimate process just for you. Your home is your biggest investment, and when your roof needs repairs, you need to know that there's someone you can count on to take the needed steps to help you. Call Hahn Roofing today to schedule your no-contact free estimate. Let Hahn Roofing handle the rest. Call 515-573-7440. At Hahn Roofing, your family is protected under our roof.
I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went through the 7th grade. I went to the 7th grade. I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. And I used to, this is true. I work in the summer and I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher, Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell, and he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester, and it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity, allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose. All divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose, and that's love for country. And to the republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people, and it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
All right, this is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice for Dodge. I got Rob Jones in the studio, and if Rob's in here, I'm going to talk to him. You know that, don't you? Here, I got to turn on your microphone. It's been so long since I had somebody in the studio with me. I got the guest microphones.
Yes, but we're still socially distancing.
We're socially distancing
in the building.
That's right.
In the room
we're
together.
Socially distancing. So are you doing a Sports Jones or what? I know your name is Rob Jones, but I'm jonesing because I have no sports.
Oh, I would definitely
I was watching the 1985 Michigan-Iowa game last night. That's
You
how
weren't-
desperate I was.
You didn't get up early and watch Korean baseball?
I did not, but I'm considering it in the future.
Yes, because ESPN, that's their new deal now, is Korean baseball.
I understand it's pretty good. I've never seen
The
it.
baseball over there is a big deal,
Yeah.
and then they produce some pretty good players. I mean, it's pretty quality baseball.
That's what I understand. You know, Japan, if you watch Japanese baseball, which I have over the years, not
Sure.
a lot, it's the same game, but it's a different game. You know, they just play it a little bit different. You know, it's the fans seem more concerned with the manager's strategy than individual player achievement. You know, we're all looking for the big strikeout or the home run or the
True.
extra base hit or whatever, you know, or the great fielding play. No. There's they have a more ordered game there, I guess.
Yeah.
But the pitchers, their wind-up and delivery is totally different for most of
It can be. And, you know, one of the things I like about baseball over there, Japan, Korea, is it's a faster-paced game than it is here in the major leagues.
It is.
Much faster paced, a little bit more activity on the base paths as far as stolen bases and
right.
hitting and running, that kind of thing. And that's the kind of baseball I like. So
Yeah, I like it too. I definitely like that kind of baseball. But if they wanted to give us, I don't know. You know, I don't know if Japanese baseball is going on right now or when it goes on, to be honest with you. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm really not sure. I know right now the ESPN is doing a deal where they're broadcasting the Korean baseball quite a bit.
And they only do that early in the morning?
Yes, 5:25 a.m. Eastern time, which would be 4:25 Central, about the time or a little bit before I usually get here in the morning. But I have not really watched any of the Korean baseball. I've got a few other things going on at that time in the morning.
Yeah,
I'm
I suppose, yeah.
trying to put
bully.
together. So
I'll tell you, I worked early mornings most of my life, so I'm okay with working afternoons now. Even when I wasn't in the radio business, I had to get up at 4:30 to go to work.
Well, I forgot to set the alarm and overslept and woke up at 10 minutes after 4 this morning.
Oh, my God.
I was still able to get here before 5. But,
Well,
yeah.
you don't have to do a newscast at 5, do you?
No, but, I mean, I have
You got
to
to gather the
produce
news.
it and have it ready
yeah.
and, that kind of deal. So.
Absolutely. So we're talking Sports Jones with Rob Jones, and he's trying to make me feel better with his Korean baseball, and I might dive in there. I'm not questioning the ability of Korean athletes at all. I'm a wrestling fan, as you may know, and I'll tell you, there have been some great Korean wrestlers over the years. I mean, tough guys.
Yeah, true. And, of course, they're pretty well-renowned in terms of all over the world for how good of ping pong players they produce over there. I mean, they're amazing at that sport, table tennis. So, yeah, the thing that I'm a little bit perplexed about is why ESPN doesn't maybe show it the first time, that time as it's live, and then just run it again like later in the day or something.
I wish they would.
Because I mean, most people are not going to be able to watch a baseball game at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I mean, so you would think you would just play it back, in prime time or whatever. So there's a question about that. But yeah, I definitely would like it for it to start back. There's a lot of talk that we may actually get some Major League Baseball over the summer. I've heard a lot of speculation there. Nothing out of the league office, but a lot of people that cover the sport say that we're going to get some Major League Baseball. They're going to do kind of a second spring training is kind of what the word's been, and then we'll get a condensed version of the season. So really hoping that. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as we have football in the fall, I'll trade everything else for football in the fall.
Well, I hope we get that too.
Oh, we almost have to have that. Like,
is that right?
Yeah. I think
Clemson's got to take the field.
You don't understand, Mike. Like down there, if those people don't get their football, it's going to be a problem down there.
Oh, if they don't get it in Texas, there's going to be a civil war. Texas against everybody else.
They've been waiting on it.
Yeah. And Florida's that way too. Florida's just flipped out crazy about football. And the Carolinas, certainly.
Georgia.
Yeah, all through
Alabama.
the Southeast, all through the Southeast.
Yeah, so it'll be a big deal. I mean,
before we work our way past the Korean thing, I do have a quick story from my military days. Many years ago, like close to 50, I was at a camp overseas, and it was kind of a multinational camp. A lot of different countries had soldiers there.
Okay.
And there was this one contingent of ROK soldiers. We called them ROK soldiers because they were Republic of Korea soldiers.
Oh, okay.
And they were a highly disciplined lot. They were, when you saw them around, man, their boots, you could shave in them. They were that polished. Well, and they're tough guys, too. They're always PTing and running around and practicing martial arts and all kinds of crazy stuff. I tell you, if I was Vietnam, I would not mess with Korea. Anyway, I'm in the dispensary, which is a little hospital, which is 2 trailers pulled together. And apparently a couple of ROK soldiers had forgotten their discipline for the night because they stole a Jeep, got drunk as hell, and were careening around the camp and overturned it. Now, there were 3 of them, and one of them was killed. And the other 2 came in all drunk, hungover, and all busted up. One of the guys had a broken collarbone, and they were all scuffed up pretty bad. But they were sitting in these chairs, holding their hands together like little kids and rocking back and forth. And I thought, what's the matter with these guys? Are they sad about the other guy that got killed? But I don't think that was it, because about a half hour later, here came a ROK major. This was an officer, and he came in with 4 security officers from the ROK battalion. And again, they all were, man, you could cut your finger on the crease in your pants, their pants, if you wanted to do that. But they came in and asked, one of the soldiers who could speak English asked where they were, and we pointed down the hallway there. And there they were, sitting there rocking, the 2 of them just rocking. And that ROK major strode right down the hallway and kicked the first one right in the head as hard as he could.
Wow.
And the other one never moved. Kicked the first one right off his chair. The other one never moved. He just kept rocking, and the major backed up and kicked the other one the same way. So I think what they were really concerned about is that ROK major showing up because they knew it was coming.
Yeah. It's kind of like your dad's coming, after work when you got in trouble. Kind of that same deal. Yeah. You said dispensary, and dispensary back then had a much different meaning than it does now.
Oh, yeah.
Because my mind, I went to dispensary, like a marijuana dispensary, because that's what's often referred to as
that
now.
Was everywhere else in the country. We didn't need it. we didn't need to go down there. I'll never understand the military's attitude. They'd give us a case of beer every month and a quart of liquor, but marijuana was everywhere. And it was good stuff, boy, I'll tell you.
How long were you over there in Korea?
Oh, I wasn't in Korea.
Oh.
I wasn't in Korea, but I was in Southeast Asia probably 18 months altogether.
Oh, okay.
So that was, it was a real educational experience from what I remember, which, by the way, I don't remember much because I was
you were visiting the dispenser.
Oh, I was visiting that dispenser, something awful.
In the modern sense.
In the modern sense, that's absolutely correct. Anyway, so you think there's going to be trouble if we don't have football?
I think it could be, yeah. I think we could have an issue because, obviously, Mike, we're all aware that there's a major divide between the people that feel like, this is, imminent death and we have to protect ourselves at all costs and shudder and, and
but those people are called Democrats, and they're scared to death.
And then there are the other people that don't think this is a problem at all. I think a lot of us, I hope most of us, are in the middle, in moderation here. I hope, but
I wear a mask, and I'm careful not to expose any.
Yeah,
I don't have anything as far as I know, but this is a sneaky disease.
Yeah.
So I'll wear a mask and wash my hands and keep my social distance like we're doing.
Reasonable.
Be reasonable. Yeah, that's what I want to do. But think back to the first of the year. The economy was roaring. Trump had everything under control. He was going to be reelected. Now, if we can keep this bad economy going, and we can keep the economy shut down and roll it right up to the election day, and then we'll have senile Joe. He'll be the winner because that's what'll take out a sitting president is an unpopular war or a bad economy.
Well, I've heard that theory, and
it's not a theory, Rob.
Well, okay, that line of thinking, because I'm not going to say that that's the absolute truth, because I'm going to remain I'm going to keep my journalism integrity is down the middle here, and say that I don't know for sure that that's the truth, but I know that there are a lot of people that feel that way.
I want to ask you a question since you're from South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And the Civil War started in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
How was that taught in South Carolina schools? When you went to school as a kid, what did your teachers teach you about the start of the Civil War?
Fort Sumter, Battle of Fort Sumter.
Yeah.
And that the Civil War was basically started there and fought because of differences between the Union and Confederacy on slavery.
Oh, well, that's exactly what it was. But did your teachers? What is that sound I'm hearing in my headphones?
I don't know. I don't have headphones on. So.
Well, good morning.
Yesterday, this is the governor. I'm sorry. Get out of the way, Governor. That was we recorded. We didn't record it, but I've got the governor's press conference coming up later in the day. We've been recording it in the morning. Rob has. He got busy today, so I called it up on a website. Now we'll have the governor's press conference later. When I was in North Carolina, especially the older people thought that the Civil War was an invasion by the North, an unjust war that was waged on the states who were just trying to mind their own business.
I don't feel like they didn't approach it that way from an educational sense.
Well, they might. I was in North Carolina years ago, and I shouldn't even say that they were teaching that in some Carolina schools back then, because these were the older people. I mean, my age.
Yeah, and I'm sure there were
people would have been my age way back in 35 years ago or more. And they might have been taught something different.
Yeah, I'm sure there are people that probably felt that way in that part of the country. I'm sure they still are. There still is people there that probably feel that way. In fact, I'm pretty certain of it. But it's not taught as if it is fact, or at least it wasn't when I was going to school down there.
All right. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Civil War was a long time ago.
It really was.
I'm fascinated by the war. My son was young when that Civil War series by Ken Burns came on PBS.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't get enough of it. I think he's got the DVD at home or something. But he got me into it a little bit. And it was the great thing that series did, the Civil War, was humanize people. It wasn't the South. It wasn't the North. It wasn't soldiers this or soldiers that. These were real people.
Yeah.
Real on both sides who had real emotion and real dedication. And sometimes you had to admire people on both sides.
Yeah, and you had civil wars within families where you had family members on each side and things of that nature too. And that's the thing to remember. We don't often think of it, but every single war that's fought in the world is fought by people.
Yeah, yes it is. I think there was that great picture in the Civil War series by Ken Burns. A Union soldier, officer, was sitting in his finery on a wooden fence like they had at the time. Seated right next to him was a Confederate officer about his same age. These guys would have been about 30 at the time. A Confederate officer dressed in his finery. Really nice-looking uniforms, both of them. And the reason that picture was taken is because earlier in the day, the Union soldiers and the Confederate soldiers had skirmished, and the Confederate officer was taken prisoner. Now, the commander of the squadron that took the Confederate officer prisoner was a classmate at West Point.
Wow.
So he rounded up his classmate. He saw him and said, "Man, get out of that line. You're coming with me." He took him. He took him as a friend rather than a prisoner, of course.
Well, he's kind of lucky. He's fortunate that happened that way. But yeah, that's the interesting thing about because you get a war like that where you've got the country divided, you have even more divisions and more angles of these people who are family members or from the same places sometimes, or guys who are friends like that who find themselves on the opposite ends, and that's what it was. And I think that's one of the things that is so fascinating about it.
Yeah, it really is. I'm sorry, I was distracted. I got a couple of messages right there.
I started to just keep talking. I probably should have.
That's right.
Nobody would have known that you were distracted.
Everybody's canceled on me today. The mayor canceled. Now Janice Valentine's canceled on me for tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
I just don't know what to do anymore. Anyway, Rob, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to confess?
That AM 1400 KVFD.
From the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom, I'm Rob Jones. J. Mars Drive-In here in Fort Dodge has closed for this week. Owner Jerry Jordison has confirmed the closure is due to an employee who tested positive for COVID-19. Jordison says the last time the employee was in the restaurant was last Friday, and the employee had limited contact with other employees. As a preemptive measure, Jordison requested that all employees who had contact with the person be tested. The results of those tests are pending and should come back later this week. Jordison praised the work of local health officials who granted his request to have his employees tested. Jordison says the restaurant will remain closed the rest of this week with plans to reopen on Monday, and he says the restaurant will be thoroughly disinfected prior to reopening. A Waterloo man was arrested Wednesday on out-of-state warrants that charge him with the murder of 3 women nearly 30 years ago. Radio Iowa's Elwin Huffman with more.
Authorities accused 58-year-old Clark Baldwin of murdering 2 women in Wyoming in 1992 and a third in Tennessee in 1991. Investigators say they linked the former long-haul truck driver to the crimes after taking Baldwin's DNA from his garbage and from a shopping cart he used at a Waterloo Walmart. According to court records, the bodies of the 3 women, 2 of whom were pregnant, were all discovered either in a ditch or remote areas near interstate highways. Baldwin is being held in the Blackhawk County Jail awaiting extradition to Wyoming, where he'll be tried first. I'm Elwin Huffman, Radio Iowa, Waterloo.
28-year-old Moreland resident Tanner Lowe was sentenced to over 6 years in federal prison Wednesday for illegal possession of firearms on multiple occasions. Lowe received the sentence after pleading guilty in December to possession of a firearm by a felon. He was sentenced to 77 months in federal prison in U.S. District Court in Sioux City. There is no parole in the federal system, and Lowe will have to serve a 3-year term of supervised release after his prison sentence. He is currently in the custody of the U.S. Marshals until he's transported to federal prison. Governor Kim Reynolds has signed a proclamation allowing campgrounds, drive-in movie theaters, tanning facilities, and medical spas to reopen tomorrow. Radio Iowa's O.K. Henderson has more.
Iowa dentists will be able to perform routine procedures if their office has enough masks and other personal protective equipment. Last Friday, restaurants and other businesses were allowed to reopen in 77 Iowa counties. Social and fraternal clubs in those counties may reopen this Friday to serve food and beverages, but at 50% capacity. In the other 22 counties, fitness centers can start taking appointments and let one person in at a time to work out. Malls and other retail businesses can reopen at half capacity, too. However, restaurants in the 22-county zone must remain closed. Radio Iowa, I'm OK Henderson.
Webster County Auditor Doreen Pliner has announced that there is in-person absentee voting at a new location this year. Due to the construction at the courthouse, the voting has been moved to the DHS building at 330 First Avenue North here in Fort Dodge. This absentee precinct will be open from 8 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. weekdays for absentee voting for the June 2nd primary election. Absentee ballots for the primary election can be cast at the DHS building through 4:30 p.m. on June 1st. If you have received an absentee ballot by mail and wish to return them in person, they can be returned in the drop box at the Webster County Courthouse main lobby, 701 Central Avenue here in Fort Dodge. Absentee ballots returned by mail must be postmarked by midnight on June 1st. That's your Alpha Media News Update from the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom. I'm Rob Jones.
This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice for Dodge. We're waiting on Dr. Peter Fisher to call, and I believe this could be him right here. Is this Dr. Fisher?
It is.
All right, hang on just a minute, please, Dr. Fisher. Obituaries this hour brought to you by Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services at 1615 North 15th Street, Fort Dodge. You may contact Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services by calling 515-576-7128 or online at www.gundersonfuneralhome.com. First of all, it's my pleasure to report that Dr. Fisher isn't in the obituaries today, and neither am I, so we lucked out there. Dan McCool, well-known sports writer, wrestling sports writer for most of his life, died on May 4th. Dan did not live in our town, but he was originally from Clarion, and he was one of the greatest Iowa wrestling sports writers I ever saw in my life. So, Dan McCool, please rest in peace. Obituaries this hour brought to you by Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services at 1615 North 15th Street, Fort Dodge. You may contact Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services by calling 515-576-7128 or online at www.gundersonfuneralhome.com.
Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to confess?
That AM 1400 KVFD.
Yes, I'm the Doctor of Truth, and with me now is, again, a Doctor of Economics. He is Dr. Peter Fisher of the Iowa Policy Project in Iowa City. You may find out more about the Iowa Policy Project by going to iowapolicyproject.org or iowafiscal.org. I didn't see anything from Mike Owen of the Iowa Policy Project concerning our topic today there, Doctor, so maybe you could bring me up to speed.
Okay. He might have neglected to send that your way. Yeah, I just was looking at where some potential hotspots are likely to arise outside of the 22 counties where we have still some restrictions on activity. Some of those were relaxed just yesterday afternoon in the governor's announcement, shortly after we put our report out. But, she exempted, it took 77 counties and said we're pretty much going to start reopening businesses there. And I thought I'd look at all 77 and see if there are some in that group where maybe that wasn't such a good idea.
Well, that's a great topic. I'll tell you, Dr. Fisher, when Mike told me that you were going to be on today, I was delighted. We are really on a razor's edge here. The economy is taking an enormous hit, and the coronavirus is spreading. I've said this several times that I've talked just in the last few days with a Fort Dodge businessman who made $130 in April, the entire month. That was his cash receipts. I also talked with another businessman in business over 20 years who told me he didn't think he was going to survive, his business would survive the coronavirus, rather than leave it to his adult children as he hoped he might have to go bankrupt. Now, this is no small thing. Of course, death trumps everything, but losing people's lifelong businesses and losing their dreams, that's a big thing in our state. I know that's something you can't necessarily quantify, but it's something that we have to pay attention to. I know you're somebody who's data-driven, and I appreciate that, and we have to have that.
Yeah.
But this, again, is a very, very difficult choice we're facing.
Well, unfortunately, we won't be able to quantify the death toll in terms of small businesses dying probably until this is down the road a ways. Maybe not when it's all over, but we don't really know the impact until we see, what happens when the economy does reopen. How many of those little businesses and restaurants are able to come back and reopen, and how many never do open their doors again. But yeah, I'm very sensitive to that. I've got good friends with small businesses. One that just opened one in downtown Iowa City. Her market was university students, and her staff was university students. And 2 months into her business, her clients and her staff all left. Of course.
But the bills still keep rolling in.
No business. Yeah. And boy, yeah, it's rough. And, when I looked at the 77, there were 8 or 10 where you'd think, wow, these are counties that are, where maybe Johnson County was a month ago, and the case numbers are starting to take off. And if you just say, well, everybody, let's try to get back to normal right now, they could be in trouble. And, it seemed like there were a couple of things going on. One was there were a few counties where it's probably because they're right on the edge of, Des Moines metro area, and there's so much commuting and other traffic going back and forth. It was just a matter of time before, Story County and Warren County started experiencing some rapid growth in cases. But the main thing in the other counties was proximity to a meatpacking plant. And that seems to be, and not all of these are places where there's been any announced outbreak. You look at where the rapid growth is, and you're scratching your head, like Crawford County, Guthrie County, Wapello County, Buena Vista, Sioux County. Those are places that are good ways from any metro area they might be commuting to. But they've all got a packing plant, or they're right next door to one, within a half hour's drive from one.
Yeah, we have one 17 miles away. And,
the Prestige plant?
The Prestige plant, yeah. And a lot of people are out of work. Again, the bills still keep coming. The mortgage payment is due. The car payment's due. Groceries. I went to a grocery store yesterday here in town, and they were restricting meat sales. As a matter of fact, they were out of a lot of things. I'm not talking about toilet paper. I'm talking about food items. They were out. Now, if we start having a food scarcity problem, if people find they may not have enough to eat, I'm afraid those who are arguing that we should have more restrictive measures on our personal movements are going to be seen as clowns, frankly, and just get out of the way because we have to have food. I mean, this is I would describe our situation as dire, or right on the precipice of being a dire situation for our state and our country. It's like one side believes that all you have to do is stay in the house and force people to wear masks and this sort of thing, and certainly I'm doing that. But there doesn't seem to be much forward movement in the coronavirus as far as finding an effective way to control it. And the worst thing and the biggest thing is it seems to be affecting the food supply. And if that's, I've had the pork producers on with me just in the last 24 hours. And my pork producer, Greg Hora, is a real sunny and optimistic guy. He was not so sunny the last 2 times I talked with him.
Well, I'm curious because I look at the numbers for Webster County and Wright County, and there's no significant number of cases in either place. So I'm wondering, is Prestige doing something different than the other packing plants have done? The JBS and the Smithfield plants seem to have not been very proactive and responsible in the way they've tried to prevent outbreaks, and all their plants are experiencing rapid.
Prestige does seem to be a forward-thinking company when it comes to this sort of work. They closed down one weekend, or maybe it was 3 days, but certainly a weekend. They sent everybody home, and they brought in a cleaning crew and cleaned the place top to bottom. And when they brought the workforce back, they were very careful about social distance rules. Everybody wore a mask. That anything that could be done humanly possible was being done to stop the spread of coronavirus. I don't know if the other plants did that or not, frankly.
No, they didn't. Certainly not in time. And I guess to me, the idea of saying, we've got to have a food supply. You folks have to go to work, and then not requiring basic work safety requirements on these packing plants, saying, if we want you to reopen, but you got to reopen safely. I mean, there are guidelines that the OSHA has developed and updated just recently on what it takes to operate a packing plant relatively safely, and Prestige may be following all of those. But to say you got to go back to work and then say, but all these safety requirements, it's up to you. I think that's criminal.
Yeah, anybody saying that or forcing their workers to do that ought to go to jail. But I'm not aware of anybody who's forcing their workers back to the line. Are you?
Well, you can't force them back to the line, but you can say, like the governor said a couple of weeks ago, if you decide not to go to work because you don't think your workplace is safe, remember you're not going to be able to collect unemployment.
Well, that was a rotten thing to do, wasn't it?
And it would turn out she was wrong.
Yeah,
actually,
but she was. Hey,
you
you know as well as I do that Governor Reynolds was a protege of Terry Branstad. Who was the best friend Terry Branstad ever had? It was the packing plant business. Ronald Reagan broke all the unions at the packing plants back in the 80s, and they started shipping in illegal workers by the plane load in some cases. And what paid $10 an hour in the 1970s still pays $10 an hour at these packing plants. And the conditions, I don't know if they're any better or not. I really don't.
Mm-hmm. I was reading about that recently, and they did improve for a while, and now we've kind of let things slip. I mean, most recently, the line speed issue. Trump administration just said, hey, guess what? You don't have to abide by those rules anymore. You can speed things up, which is the last thing you want to do when you're trying to operate a safer workplace. The guy's got to sneeze. You don't have time to sneeze. You don't have time to cover your mouth. There's another pig coming down the line, and you got to do it. So anyway.
So the problem is Trump and Reynolds. I knew it, you Iowa City guys. I knew it. Yeah, there you go. It's all the Republicans' fault. Yeah. Remember that on Election Day, vote Biden, even though he doesn't remember his name.
Okay, let's not get started on that road.
Hey, you opened the door, Peter.
Yeah.
First a remark about Reynolds, then Trump. Oh, yeah, I'm going to say something. But we're off it now. What is do you have county by county statistics on where the danger is to coronavirus is worse or the least?
Yeah, I picked out these 8 counties. I mean, the rest of them, you're looking and say, oh my gosh, it doubled there in a week. Well, it went from 1 to 2. So I'm not worried about those places. But, Wapello County had, let me get the right numbers here. I just updated this today. They had 10 cases a week ago. They got 165 now. Look at the counties around there. They're still in single digits. So what's going on there? They haven't reported an outbreak at the packing plant there, but and I don't remember if that's a Smithfield or JBS, but you have to think that's where it is. Crawford County, 24 cases a week ago, 124 now. That's almost a 7-fold increase in a week. That's cause for concern. So there's 8 of them where, it's not just that the numbers are increasing, the rate is increasing. Maybe a 50% increase one week, 150% the next week. You have to wonder where that's headed. It doesn't look good.
None of it looks good.
What happens when those packing workers come home? The governor said, well, packing plant employee disease numbers, that's not community spread. Well, it's not yet, but it soon will be. They're not isolating themselves, and often they don't know they're symptomatic. That's the scariest thing. So many people that test positive, they didn't know they had anything. They're walking around spreading it. So,
those are great questions. Do we have any answers for them? Does your research give us any answers as to where we should be going, what we should be emphasizing? Are you suggesting that we stay in place? Are you suggesting we restrict what the packing plants are doing or close them? Or what does your research suggest?
Well, I don't know that you need to. Some of the packing companies on their own have said we need to close for a week to clean things up, to get people, make sure, give them time to develop symptoms so if they show up for work and, we know we can test. But, they shouldn't be bringing back people to work unless they have the mechanism in place to provide protection and to test workers when they show up for work. But I think at least in those 8 or 10 counties where we're seeing pretty rapid growth, if we don't reimpose those social distancing rules that we had a few weeks ago, those communities are going to be in bad shape. The administration has put out guidelines for what should be in place before you reopen the economy, and it sounds pretty sensible, but nobody's following them. We don't need any of that. We don't have the testing in place. We don't have the flat numbers. The number of new cases per day is still several hundred. So, it's a dilemma. But if we open things up too soon, it's not just going to be more people sick, more people dying. It's going to be more economic wreckage as well because there's nobody healthy to work at those packing plants. So,
Peter, you're being a real tease here. I got to tell you, you're being a tease here. I hear your concerns, and they all make sense. They're all logical, but Are your concerns and some of your remedies, are they the answer? By that I mean a packing plant, by its definition, is going to have people in and out of it all the time. There's going to be truckers coming from all over the place hauling hogs every single day. I don't know how many truckloads. Every single day. And you can slow that down, but there's just not going to be a system that's perfect. And frankly, the coronavirus will spread. And packing plant, whatever we do with the packing plants, the coronavirus is still going to spread. I don't know the answer. I don't know the solution. I've been bugging everybody to give me some sort of answer because I definitely come down on the side of those who want to open their businesses, and it's not a lot of people think it's frivolous to want to open our lives back up a little bit, like all we want to do is go out and play tennis or something. That's not it. We want to go out. Are you ready for this? I'm an essential worker, Peter. So I'm working all the time. But there are a lot of people who aren't, and they have concerns about where their lives are going, other than the coronavirus. We need a little bit more than the usual back and forth. Well, you're going to die if you're exposed to coronavirus, or there's a good chance, and you must not go out, or you must observe these rules. That's all fine. But we have to find a way to get the economy going again. And by the economy, I mean get our lives going again. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah, I just, everything I read tells me that this disease spreads by person-to-person contact, and you've got to figure out a way to open up the economy where you minimize that, or you do enough testing where you know which person shouldn't be having any contact with anybody else. I hate to see come down to, we're just going to have to deal with it. A lot of people are going to have to die. I don't think that's the answer either.
But this is the first time, I think this is the first time in our history that we've faced a pandemic where that is the question. This is a brutal question. There's no good answer to this pandemic. What we don't need is a lot of political back and forth. We need people, we came together after when the Second World War was on. We came together after 9/11. We can't get together now. For God's sake, all of us could be, or all of us are being affected, but we're still back and forth. It drives me nuts. Anyway, is there anything else, Dr. Fisher? Because you've certainly given us some food for thought.
God, I think that's enough. At some point every day, I think, okay, I can't even think about this anymore. I'm going to go take a walk, look at my apple trees blooming, watch the Orioles.
This is from one of the great economic minds in Iowa, ladies and gentlemen. He don't know, I don't know. Hell, we're screwed. Boy, there's a lesson for today. Anyway, Dr. Peter Fisher has been our guest. He's with the Iowa Policy Project, and you can find out more about the Iowa Policy Project, which is a great group, by the way. They're dedicated to fact-based information that they believe or hope will affect public policy, even though it practically never does. But I appreciate them hanging in there anyway. You can find out more about the Iowa Policy Project by going to iowapolicyproject.org or iowafiscal.org. You'll find a lot of information there and written by our guest, Dr. Peter Fisher. Thank you, Doctor.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
All right. This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. It's 2:57. I think Nevin Conrad might be up in the next hour, or Denny Ploutz, both. I think Denny Ploutz, I may have told him the wrong time this morning. My God, you wouldn't think I would make a mistake, would you? But I think I did. Anyway, AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge weather. There's going to be some rain off and on after 5 o'clock today. Mostly cloudy, high 64. It's 62 right now. Overnight showers, low 35. That's pretty cold, really. Tomorrow, sunny with a high of 54. On Saturday, a chance of showers and thunderstorms after one widespread frost on Saturday. On Sunday, it'll be sunny with a high of 56. Monday, areas of frost early in the morning, otherwise mostly sunny with a high of 58. On Tuesday, sunny with a high of 61. On Wednesday, it'll be mostly cloudy with a high of 64. Right now, 62. Good afternoon. You're on the air at AM 1400.
Well, Mike, this is Dennis calling for your next session.
You rock, Denny.
Am I early?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're way early. Yeah, it's 3:10, Denny, is when we...
Oh, okay. You left me 3 o'clock, so...
Yeah, I screwed up. My fault.
I'll call you back.
Thank you. Yeah, Denny Ploutz coming up. This is AM 1400 KVFD.
Here's a look at how the markets closed today. May corn up 4 1/4 at 3.16. July up 3 3/4 at 3.18. September up 3 cents at 3.23 1/4, and December up 2 3/4 at 3.34. May soybeans closed up 11 cents at 8.41 1/2. July up 11 3/4 at 8.44 1/4. August up 11 at 8.45. September up 10 1/4 at $8.44 3/4. May wheat closed up 4 1/4 at $5.29. Soybean meal up 50 cents a ton at $2.8360. June live cattle up the 450 limit to close at $93.97. August up 450 at $99.95. May feeders up 617 at $130.27. August up 540 at $138.15. May lean hogs up 70 cents at $68.80. June down 167 at $63.90. I am Dwayne Murley.
Today on This Old But Still Nice House.
Hey, I'm going to start on getting that paint off the windowsill.
Wouldn't do that. This house was built before 1978. That's probably lead-based paint.
I don't think there's enough here to make a difference. Can't I just do it?
Sure, we can start the Lead Professional Certification Program on the Iowa Department of Public Health's website. Or we could just go to the site and find someone from their list of certified professionals.
Seriously, stop scraping. Find out what happens on the next episode of This Old But Still Nice House.
This is KVFD, Fort Dodge, Iowa, 3 o'clock.
An innocent man, on Lisa Brady, Fox News. That's how President Trump describes former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. He's defended him before, but now the Justice Department has filed a motion to drop the ongoing criminal case against Flynn, who's been trying to take back his guilty plea for lying to the FBI. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell telling Fox News he believes Flynn was set up.
All these developments that we're now reading about certainly make it look like this whole Russia issue was conspired with by certain people at the FBI.
Recently revealed evidence, including the notes of FBI agents, showed discussions about possibly trying to get Flynn to lie as part of the Russia probe. The president also reaffirming he continues to test negative for coronavirus after the first case at the White House. One of the president's valets, a Navy service member, testing positive. All of these comments during an Oval Office meeting with the Texas governor, who earlier today removed jail as a possible punishment for violating his shutdown orders, stemming from the case of a salon-owning mom who was locked up for reopening her business too soon. She's now been released. The government's report on employment comes out tomorrow, and it could be historically bad. Today's report on unemployment claims pushing the 7-week total to more than 33 million. And there's a new high-profile bankruptcy.
Iconic luxury retailer Neiman Marcus has filed for bankruptcy reorganization in federal court in Texas. The company had a revival plan, but it was dealing with more than $5 billion in debt. And when the coronavirus closed its stores, the company wound up unable to survive without the help of the court. Neiman Marcus has been controlled by investment firms. Its creditors will now become the majority owners of the business.
Fox's Ginny Cosola. America is listening to Fox News.
Americans rely on affordable, reliable package delivery from the U.S. Postal Service. It's a lifeline for rural communities. It powers our cities. But Washington politicians want to impose a massive package rate hike on the Postal Service, a 400% increase. We can't afford that these days. Quadrupling the price to send a package? That means 4 times the cost for seniors to ship their medication, 4 times to deliver household necessities, and 4 times the cost for small businesses. Unneeded rate hikes that will harm Main Street and everyday Americans. America can't afford the package tax now. Call Congress now. 202-224-3121. Tell them to stop the package tax. The Postal Service is an economic lifeline for small businesses and rural customers all over the country. That's 202-224-3121 and tell them to stop the postal rate hike. Paid for by the Package Coalition.
A new study from an AIDS research group shows counties with higher Black populations accounting for more than half of coronavirus cases and nearly 60% of deaths. This is reflected in Tennessee's largest county, Shelby, which is home to Memphis, and an effort led by clergy to help.
The health department says 68% of COVID-19 cases in the county are African American. Pastor Ricky Floyd.
People are sick and being impacted by this because lack of wealth and lack of health. Low immune system, high diabetes.
Now Pastor Floyd joins other pastors in taking the coronavirus test to make people feel comfortable about it while ending myths and fears concerning the test. As for the study, it factors in socioeconomic conditions. Pastor Floyd.
You take a person who in Fraser who may have a household of 5 in an 800 square foot home. If they hear quarantine, how do you quarantine with 5 people in an 800 square foot home?
CJ Papa, Fox News.
Joe Biden holding a virtual roundtable event with African American leaders in the battleground state of Florida. The presumptive Democratic presidential nominee also holding an online rally in Tampa today, pivoting from his recent interviews and fundraisers from a makeshift basement studio. A classic rocker dies pretty young.
The lead singer for Bad Company, Brian Howe, died Wednesday suffering from cardiac arrest. Howe was not the original singer of the band. Howe replaced Paul Rogers back in 1986 and lent his vocals to one of the band's most successful albums, Holy Water, which produced a top 20 hit, If You Needed Somebody. Howe was also a former vocalist for Ted Nugent and recorded vocals for his Penetrator album in '84. He was 66 years old.
Fox's Michelle Polino. I'm Lisa Brady, and this is Fox News.
From the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom, I'm Rob Jones. J. Mars Drive-In here in Fort Dodge has closed for this week. Owner Jerry Jordison has confirmed the closure is due to an employee who tested positive for COVID-19. Jordison says the last time the employee was in the restaurant was last Friday, and the employee had limited contact with other employees. As a preemptive measure, Jordison requested that all employees who had contact with the person be tested. The results of those tests are pending and should come back later this week. Jordison praised the work of local health officials who granted his request to have his employees tested. Jordison says the restaurant will remain closed the rest of this week with plans to reopen on Monday, and he says the restaurant will be thoroughly disinfected prior to reopening. A Waterloo man was arrested Wednesday on out-of-state warrants that charge him with the murder of 3 women nearly 30 years ago. Radio Iowa's Elwin Huffman with more.
Authorities accused 58-year-old Clark Baldwin of murdering 2 women in Wyoming in 1992 and a third in Tennessee in 1991. Investigators say they linked the former long-haul truck driver to the crimes after taking Baldwin's DNA from his garbage and from a shopping cart he used at a Waterloo Walmart. According to court records, the bodies of the 3 women, 2 of whom were pregnant, were all discovered either in a ditch or remote areas near interstate highways. Baldwin is being held in the Blackhawk County Jail, awaiting extradition to Wyoming, where he'll be tried first. I'm Elwin Huffman, Radio Iowa, Waterloo.
28-year-old Moreland resident Tanner Lowe was sentenced to over 6 years in federal prison Wednesday for illegal possession of firearms on multiple occasions. Lowe received the sentence after pleading guilty in December to possession of a firearm by a felon. He was sentenced to 77 months in federal prison in U.S. District Court in Sioux City. There is no parole in the federal system, and Lowe will have to serve a 3-year term of supervised release after his prison sentence. He is currently in the custody of the U.S. Marshals until he's transported to federal prison. Governor Kim Reynolds has signed a proclamation allowing campgrounds, drive-in movie theaters, tanning facilities, and medical spas to reopen tomorrow. Radio Iowa's O.K. Henderson has more.
Iowa dentists will be able to perform routine procedures if their office has enough masks and other personal protective equipment. Last Friday, restaurants and other businesses were allowed to reopen in 77 Iowa counties. Social and fraternal clubs in those counties may reopen this Friday to serve food and beverages, but at 50% capacity. In the other 22 counties, fitness centers can start taking appointments and let one person in at a time to work out. Malls and other retail businesses can reopen at half capacity, too. However, restaurants in the 22 county zone must remain closed. Radio Iowa, I'm O.K. Henderson.
Webster County Auditor Doreen Pliner has announced that there is in-person absentee voting at a new location this year. Due to the construction at the courthouse, the voting has been moved to the DHS building at 330 First Avenue North here in Fort Dodge. This absentee precinct will be open from 8 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. weekdays for absentee voting for the June 2nd primary election. Absentee ballots for the primary election can be cast at the DHS building through 4:30 p.m. on June 1st. If you have received an absentee ballot by mail and wish to return them in person, they can be returned in the drop box at the Webster County Courthouse main lobby, 701 Central Avenue here in Fort Dodge. Absentee ballots returned by mail must be postmarked by midnight on June 1st. That's your Alpha Media News Update from the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom. I'm Rob Jones.
Here's the AM 1400 KVFD weatherology forecast. Chance for scattered showers this afternoon, otherwise cloudy skies. Daytime highs approaching 64, west winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. Isolated rain showers likely. Tonight, lows level off around 35, cloudy skies expected. Daytime highs approaching 54. Tomorrow, ample sunshine expected. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 63.
Right now, the world feels different as we stay apart to make sure we can safely come back together. Till then, there is something you can do without even leaving your home. Respond to the 2020 census online, by phone, or by mail. The census impacts where hundreds of billions in federal funding will go for things like hospitals, schools, and roads. Now is the time to go to 2020census.gov. It's as easy as it is important. Shape your future. Start here at 2020census.gov. Paid for by U.S. Census Bureau.
I'm Phil Gunderson. Gunderson's has a tradition of providing services unmatched in our community. Funeral, cremation, and pre-planning services with certified celebrants on staff, aftercare, video, and customized printed goods that are the standard. We offer live streaming options and community support with remembrance and educational programs. When it's time to look for a funeral home, look to Gunderson's.
Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services.
Time's running out to win $5,000 a week for life from Publishers Clearinghouse. Enter now at PCH.com and you could win $5,000 a week after week, for life. Don't miss your chance to win, because $5,000 a week for life is ready to be awarded on June 30th. Enter at PCH.com before it's too late. That's PCH.com. Better hurry if you want the next big winner to be you. Enter now at PCH.com. Entries due 6/25. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited.
Here's a look at how the markets closed today. May corn up 4 1/4 at $3.16. July up 3 3/4 at $3.18. September up 3 cents at $3.23 1/4, and December up 2 3/4 at $3.34. May soybeans closed up 11 cents at $8.41 1/2. July up 11 3/4 at $8.44 1/4. August up 11 at $8.45. September up 10 1/4 at $8.44 3/4. May wheat closed up 4 1/4 at $5.29. Soybean meal up 50 cents a ton at $283.60. June live cattle up the 450 limit to close at 93.97. August up 450 at 99.95. May feeders up 6.17 at 130.27. August up 540 at 138.15. May lean hogs up 70 cents at 68.80. June down 167 at 63.90. I am Dwayne Murley.
Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to confess?
At AM 1400 KVFD.
Well, that's right. I'm the Doctor of Truth here at AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. Joining me now, ladies and gentlemen, is the Doctor of the Economy, the second one I've talked to today. He, of course, is Denny Plautz, who's a longtime head of the Growth Lines. Haven't seen you, haven't talked with you, Denny. What have you been in, up in Montana or something?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been on a fairly irregular schedule.
Oh, you're irregular, huh?
I didn't know how irregular it could get.
We live in strange times, that's for sure.
Yeah, we've had, of course, we closed to the public like you have. And,
oh yeah.
I've tried to have no more than about half a staff in here at a time. So we make sure we're covering the phones and emails, and I've got computers where people can work from home. And actually, I've been spending the afternoons in here as well as some of the morning, and it's kind of nice. It's dark, nobody around. It's almost like being on vacation, but yeah, you're working.
Yeah, you're working. Yeah, well, the internet was out at my house again today, so I depend on the internet, of course, to get things in line for the afternoon show, to get in contact with people. And my internet was out all day, and it still, when I left the house, it still was out. So thank you, MediaCom. I was hoping I could complain to the mayor this afternoon, but he canceled on me. So he must have heard.
I don't know. I've had some erratic internet trouble at my house, too. It hasn't been extended, but it's been off and on, and so I don't know what's going on.
God bless MediaCom. We really don't need our own broadband. I should get Chip Baltimore back up here and chew him out. One thing about Chip, he doesn't chew out too easy. Denny, I don't know if you heard or not, but I was talking with Dr. Peter Fisher of the University of Iowa, and of course you're very familiar with Dr. Fisher's work.
And his students, but yeah, go ahead.
You know some of his students, did you say?
Well, Dave Swenson was a student of his.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Dave's an economist.
I heard that someplace, or I read it somewhere, and I know Dave much better and spend more time, working with him. In fact, I used to, when I was at the city, I would call Dave about once a year, and we would talk about what we were doing, because he's, he has concerns about tax increment and incentives and different things, and I always used to bounce things off him to see how he felt about what the city of Fort Dodge was doing with their money, and we had a great relationship, and he was a big supporter of what we were doing, back 15 years ago, and so I like Dave. I've done a couple public radio shows with him on those kinds of topics.
Sure. Yeah, as far as you're concerned, the trifecta is Ernie Goss, Dave Swenson, and Peter Fisher, isn't it? I mean,
yeah. Well, I'm there aren't a lot of places you can go that specialize in these areas.
Yeah.
You just named three of them.
Yeah. I know there's others at ISU, and ISU, I'll tell you, I really got to tap into their brain trust down there, because they have some brilliant young people there. I've met them over the years, talked with them on air, and they can see the future, and I can barely find my way to the bathroom.
Well, they have a good planning and design school at Iowa State, and so and then of course the engineering program. So Iowa State's a school that people like me rely on a lot.
Well, it doesn't hurt that you're a graduate of Iowa State either, right?
Oh, no.
Did you take planning and design, or what was your?
Yeah, planning and landscape architecture, and then I actually went to Augustana University before that and had a business administration degree there.
Augustana, where's that at? That's school for Lutheran. Sioux Falls?
Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It was
okay.
Sioux Falls College when I was there. Now it's Sioux Falls University.
Okay. So they dropped the religious affiliation altogether, huh?
No, they just added the curriculums, and they met whatever standards you had to meet to be a university and not a college.
Okay, I guess we're done with the biography of Denny Plouts here today.
And I did renew my Cyclone ticket order this week. I hope we have a season.
Yeah. I used to get. I didn't last year, but I swear to God, I'm getting season tickets to ISU wrestling this year. I think Kevin Dresser is going to bring that program back. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. What I really want to talk to you about, Denny, and you're the perfect person to talk to where you're sitting today, is the economic situation in Fort Dodge. Now, the great question that we have before us, not only in our state but in the country, is how do we get people back to work safely? No one wants to see anyone die, for God's sake. But our economy is in critical condition, at least in the state. I tell you, Denny, I've talked, and I've said this many times, I've talked with a few businessmen in our area in Fort Dodge, and they could have never foreseen what a terrible few months this has been for them. And at least one of them doesn't think he's going to make it. He's been in business a long time. So I understand that we have to shelter. I understand that we have to wear masks. And I'm doing all that. I'm washing my hands. I didn't realize how much I was touching my face over the years. I'm willing to do all that in the name of public safety. But by the same token, we have to have a life to come back to. If we're seeing, and I saw this just yesterday in the grocery store, there were, I don't know if rationing meat is the way to put it, but they were out of some things, and they couldn't tell anybody when they would get these meat products back.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen that before in my life, Denny. You know, you and I are pretty close to the same age. I don't think you have either. You have never walked into a grocery store in the state of Iowa and seen shortages.
No, you're right. I agree with you. First of all, I'm not a medical expert, obviously. I'm not a doctor, and so it's a difficult question, but I was speaking with the manager of Fairway this morning. They donated a bunch of $50 gift cards to the Growth Alliance, and we're going to, by random selection, hand those out to small businesses as we define them by membership value in the community, as a, just a participatory thing that, in a small way to help some of these folks out. But the answer, I think, is going to be extremely varied. You have a different situation with ownership that maybe purchased a large company recently.
Like Prestige?
Well, no, but I have some thoughts on that too. But I'm saying, typically people will have the capital money reserve when they buy them, but then if they're put out of business right away for an extended period of time, it creates real constraints. A Prestige, for example, I think one of the difficulties in coming back will be if your assembly line like that, it's awfully hard and requires, I would think, would require some significant investment to do the stationing of people so that they are safe.
Yes, absolutely.
I think there are some large businesses at risk as much as there are the little guy. But obviously the little guy, typically is not that capitalized, has a low margin, and those are going to be difficult. But I think they're all different circumstances, and I think it's going to have to be, each company is going to have to look in a broad-based way to try and figure out who's going to come back. Some, I think, are going to come back better than they were before. Let's just suppose that somebody has a process less assembly line and now can be more efficient than a guy that's got an assembly line where people are in close proximity to each other. I know there are some things going on in the community to start to address this. That it's not for me to talk about it, but there are some things out there that are coming. But in the end, I think it's just going to take our people to pay attention. It's going to take time. But on the positive side, the whole world has been affected this way, and I think that with the whole world being affected, we're still the largest economy in the world. It's just smaller than it was. And I think that the whole world will be in this situation, but we will come back as quicker than anybody.
Oh, I think so. I may have been putting too much pressure on you, Denny, and our guest is Denny Plouts.
I was starting to sweat here.
The medical people will tell us, and this is their job, and this is why we have them in our society. The medical people will tell us in straightforward terms the threat that coronavirus poses to our well-being, not only our individual lives, but in the larger community and state and in our country. And we should weigh that and give it the utmost seriousness. I think there's a place for people like yourself and economists like we talked about a little bit earlier to come forward and say, the medical people are right, we're not doctors, we can't argue with them, but this is what's going on with the economy. This is what could go on with the economy if we do too much of one thing or the other, too much of staying at home or opening up prematurely or not taking the right safeguards or any of those things. And that's a serious question.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you, Mike. And I think we don't quite know yet. We know it's serious, but it's like so many things. It may be depending upon what happens with the virus itself, it's going to at least be a few more weeks probably before we know what the damage truly has been, and it may be a lot longer than that. Could be into the fall.
Now you're getting into football season there, Denny. Don't start a panic.
No. But I tell people ask me that a lot, and I say, I don't know. I'm hoping our medical experts are doing the right thing. That's their field, and you have to hope and trust that people are doing the right thing, and then you have to do what your part in that is. Now, we've got right now 2 clients that are new. They would be new to the community. They haven't stopped a thing because of this. They're just planning for when it's over. So I don't think in the long run it's probably going to be as bad as some might think. But then I'm more optimistic than a lot of people are too, just generally. So.
Yeah, you are. I'm a little more negative. In fact, a lot more negative and cynical. Well, I'm a guy who tries to think of good questions, and it occurs to me frequently that I don't know the answer to my own questions.
Well, usually if you did, you wouldn't ask the question. So.
Well, that's true. That's absolutely true, and I try to ask questions that most people would like to know the answer to. I mean, I'm not a well-educated man necessarily, but I have always put myself in the place of those here in Fort Dodge who can ask a question in this way. Can ask Steve King a question, or Dr. Peter Fisher, or even you a lot of times. And they might want to know the answer to these questions. Probably do.
Now, one thing I could tell you, Mike, is I know that the Iowa Economic Development Authority has sent out a survey that we'd like to have businesses return. Dawn Larson with the city is working with Jill primarily, and also Kelly Halstead in our office, to augment and supplement that survey. That you'll be seeing some information come out on probably tomorrow, I'm thinking. And the reason for that is we want to hear from business what their biggest impediments are now with this having gone on for a while. And the idea would be to take a look at it at whatever level of government to see what things we could do.
Yeah, it's a difficult time, and we need to keep talking about it and not pointing fingers. I'm sickened by the political element our situation seems to have put us in. But anyway, go right ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, and I agree. I am outside of the local area. I am too, but I'm actually pleasantly surprised at how much locally people have been working together. I don't know if you were on, Mike, but we did a webinar recently where it was excuse me just a second, where we had about 77 people on the webinar talking about what our industry have been doing to react to the coronavirus. We had the Elankos and the Silgans and those kinds of people, where we had HR people talking to other HR people to see if they could glean something that might help them with their employees. But I've like this Fairway example, like Hy-Vee, like who was the other one recently that?
Costco.
Yeah, and I know the mayor is working hard at this. And the city council. I've been pleasantly surprised locally, but I agree with you. The partisanship on a larger scale is terrible.
All right, Denny Plotz has been our guest. He's the CEO of the Growth Alliance. You going to do any fishing, Denny, or don't you do that sort of thing?
I'm going to, yes. I have 2 one-week fishing trips scheduled in Minnesota this summer.
All right, man. Hey, thanks for being on.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Denny Plotz, CEO of the Growth Alliance. This is AM 1400 KVFD.
When severe weather threatens, keep it here for the Severe Weather Advisor, brought to you by Riley Armstrong Plumbing and Heating. Plumbing emergencies don't usually happen during normal business hours, so Riley Armstrong is here for you 24/7. Call 955-2232. And the Fort Museum in Frontier Village, where history comes alive. Travel back in time and celebrate the heritage of Fort Dodge at the Fort Museum. Book your next special event at the Opera House, too. When severe weather threatens, stay with your friends on the Voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400 KVFD.
From the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom, I'm Rob Jones. The 46th annual installment of Frontier Days has been canceled. The festival was originally scheduled to run June the 5th through the 7th. J. Mars Drive-In here in Fort Dodge has closed for this week. Owner Jerry Jordison has confirmed the closure is due to an employee who tested positive for COVID-19. Jordison says the last time the employee was in the restaurant was last Friday, and the employee had limited contact with other employees. As a preemptive measure, Jordison requested that all employees who had contact with the person be tested. The results of those tests are pending and should come back later this week. Jordison praised the work of local health officials who granted his request to have his employees tested. Jordison says the restaurant will remain closed the rest of this week with plans to reopen on Monday, and he says the restaurant will be thoroughly disinfected prior to reopening. A Waterloo man was arrested Wednesday on out-of-state warrants that charge him with the murder of 3 women nearly 30 years ago. Radio Iowa's Elwin Huffman with more.
Authorities accused 58-year-old Clark Baldwin of murdering 2 women in Wyoming in 1992 and a third in Tennessee in 1991. Investigators say they linked the former long-haul truck driver to the crimes after taking Baldwin's DNA from his garbage and from a shopping cart he used at a Waterloo Walmart. According to court records, the bodies of the 3 women, 2 of whom were pregnant, were all discovered either in a ditch or remote areas near interstate highways. Baldwin is being held in the Blackhawk County Jail, awaiting extradition to Wyoming, where he'll be tried first. I'm Elwin Huffman, Radio Iowa, Waterloo.
28-year-old Moreland resident Tanner Lowe was sentenced to over 6 years in federal prison Wednesday for illegal possession of firearms on multiple occasions. Lowe received the sentence after pleading guilty in December to possession of a firearm by a felon. He was sentenced to 77 months in federal prison in U.S. District Court in Sioux City. There is no parole in the federal system, and Lowe will have to serve a 3-year term of supervised release after his prison sentence. He is currently in the custody of the U.S. Marshals until he's transported to federal prison. Governor Kim Reynolds has signed a proclamation allowing campgrounds, drive-in movie theaters, tanning facilities, and medical spas to reopen tomorrow. Radio Iowa's O.K. Henderson has more.
Iowa dentists will be able to perform routine procedures if their office has enough masks and other personal protective equipment. Last Friday, restaurants and other businesses were allowed to reopen in 77 Iowa counties. Social and fraternal clubs in those counties may reopen this Friday to serve food and beverages, but at 50% capacity. In the other 22 counties, fitness centers can start taking appointments and let one person in at a time to work out. Malls and other retail businesses can reopen at half capacity, too. However, restaurants in the 22-county zone must remain closed. Radio Iowa, I'm O.K. Henderson.
Webster County Auditor Doreen Pliner has announced that there is in-person absentee voting at a new location this year. Due to the construction at the courthouse, the voting has been moved to the DHS building at 330 First Avenue North here in Fort Dodge. This absentee precinct will be open from 8 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. weekdays for absentee voting for the June 2nd primary election. Absentee ballots for the primary election can be cast at the DHS building through 4:30 p.m. on June 1st. If you have received an absentee ballot by mail and wish to return them in person, they can be returned in the drop box at the Webster County Courthouse main lobby, 701 Central Avenue here in Fort Dodge. Absentee ballots returned by mail must be postmarked by midnight on June 1st. That's your Alpha Media News Update from the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom. I'm Rob Jones.
Here's the AM 1400 KVFD weatherology forecast. Chance for scattered showers this afternoon, otherwise cloudy skies. Daytime highs approaching 64, west winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. Isolated rain showers likely. Tonight, lows level off around 35, cloudy skies expected. Daytime highs approaching 54. Tomorrow, ample sunshine expected. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 61.
The great American outdoors are right outside your back door. With battery power made by Steel. Right now, save $40 when you buy select battery-powered tools with 2 batteries and a charger. Shop online, pick up at any of over 9,000 local Steel dealers. Find yours at stihldealers.com. Offer valid for a limited time at participating dealers while supplies last. See dealer for details and consult state local guidelines for availability of promotional products and pricing in your area.
Michael Devine, the mayor of Manville.
It's a fancy title for a part-time job.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
All right, it's 3:35. A lot of people think the coronavirus spread because of Donald Trump. A lot of people blame the Chinese. Personally, I blame Nevin Conrad, who joins us now. How are you, Nevin?
Good. How are you, Mike?
I'm real good. I don't have great news here. The 46th annual installment of Frontier Days has been canceled. The festival was originally scheduled for June 5th and 7th through the 7th. Frontier Days chairman Terry Cook, the Candyman, has confirmed the cancellation as of today. That's a bummer. I don't even want to hear it. Okay.
Yep.
I always looked forward to Frontier Days a little bit anyway. Not necessarily the parade, but the deal out the fort was always fun, and the band's out there, and it's one other thing that we'll have to do without this year, but I guess we can do it.
Yep.
You know,
we're doing the same thing with baseball tournaments. We canceled our first 2, and actually that same weekend as Frontier Days, we've got one that we're going to make a formal decision on come the end of next week. So,
gosh, I hate that. Depriving the kids is the worst thing.
Yeah,
that's another thing I remember from my youth. I was so excited for baseball to start every year, and I suppose kids are the same today. And if you can't play it because of this doggone virus, well, that just sucks. It's a deadly virus. We don't even. You can pick it up. It's person to person. It's a scary thing, and we should use social distancing. We should use masks. We should wash our hands. All those things, and I'm in on all of that. I really am. And I'm not one who's just straining to get out of the house so I can go to a restaurant, though I would like it. But the situation is that a lot of our local business people, small town business owners, are experiencing a pretty tough time. Some of them may not come back. On the other hand, we do have this terrible virus. I don't expect you to have an answer for this. Nobody else does. Dr. Peter Fisher down in Iowa City didn't. Denny Plouts didn't. I don't. I've asked people all over the place. And
well, that's good that I'm not expected to.
No, don't expect. If you have the answer, Nevin, bring it forth. I'm ready. So is everybody else. We're all waiting with bated breath, our ears pressed against the radio. Nevin Conrad, give us the answer.
I got nothing. I got nothing for you.
Yeah, I know. That's what everybody has, really.
It's a difficult time, and we've been going down this process for long enough now that you can start to see some of that kind of cabin fever setting in. People want to get out, they want to do things, but at the same time, we've got to respect the fact that this is a highly contagious disease that impacts all the population, but specifically the older population, and so we've got a duty to protect them, but at the same point in time, there's an economic duty as well. Our office for the past month at least. We've still been technically open, but we've been closed to the public just to do our part in reducing the spread. But there are some businesses that have been forced to close, and thankfully through the CARES Act, PPP loans, things like that have offered a little bit of help towards some of these businesses. But yeah, definitely tough times for a lot of our friends and neighbors.
So is there any recommendation you would make or anything you would propose as a city councilman on either, well, I hate to say either side, but would you make any sort of recommendation, or would you consider any plan that would open up businesses, or do you think this is premature to talk about that sort of thing?
It's like I said, it's tough. It's a balancing act, and especially given in Iowa. I mean, we were originally looking at a peak date of April 30th, May 1st, and then, you know, as we start relaxing some of these guidelines, it seems like that deadline keeps getting pushed out. Where now I think they said it's in June.
Yeah.
And so we haven't had the worst of it in Iowa yet. We definitely haven't had the worst of it in Northwest Iowa. We've actually been fairly lucky so far.
You know, really, when you get right down to it, people don't know. I mean, the medical people don't know. I've talked with a lot of them at the state level, and they'll go on and on about the causes and their recommendations. But when pressed about when can we open up, or is there an antidote to the virus coming up soon, they're just blank stares. I mean, they don't have anything. Nobody has anything.
With this thing, there's just been so much unknown that's circulated with it, and it seems like every day we get a new piece of information. But you know, my life hasn't changed much with 3 boys at home. I'm not going very many places to start with, so pretty much work and home for me. But yeah, for others, I get it. You know, Easter was incredibly frustrating, not being able to, you know, have your regular family gathering. But at the same point in time, you know, for me on a personal level, I would rather miss those times on a limited basis than, you know, have one of my relatives get sick and potentially pass away from this. But
well, of course, that's the rational and logical thing to say. But as time goes on, it's going to start getting inside people's heads, you know?
Oh, yeah, and you can already tell. You can already tell that it is people getting frustrated with the restrictions, you know, wanting to go out to restaurants. And from my perspective, first of all, like I said, with those 3 boys, we don't often go to sit-down places just because it's tough to control those 3. So we'll keep doing our carry-out with some of our local businesses. But, yeah, it's just that's the biggest thing is, you know, a lot of these small businesses in town, like I said, those are your friends and your neighbors. And I get it's tough economic times for everybody right now. But if you've got a little bit extra where, you know, you can go out and splurge and grab a pickup meal or do something to help support some of our neighbors during these tough times.
I'm definitely calling for takeout food or curbside or whatever. You know, I've done both, and I will continue to do it both.
And the other thing, I don't know from the city side of things, the agenda is now posted to the website. We had some conversations earlier this week about kind of a local, if you want to call it a stimulus package, that the city's putting out. So it's kind of a threefold type of thing. The first step is downtown parking for the next year is proposed to be completely free for the first 2 hours. Now, obviously, if you want to stay in that spot for longer, the meters will still be there that you can plug in and stay longer than the 2 hours. But for all downtown, that first 2 hours is going to be no charge to try to help boost downtown. Second part of it is we're offering essentially 50% off anybody that pulls a building permit before July 1st, so long as construction on whatever the project is starts within 60 days of pulling that permit. So kind of an incentive for people that, you know, might have some of these projects to really spur them, get them going, get people out working on these projects as well. And the third part is actually a credit that we're proposing on water bills of $25 off, a one-time $25 right off of the bill, with the hope that obviously if you're in dire need of that $25, use it for whatever you need it. But if you've got some wiggle room, we hope that, $25 may not seem like a lot, but go out, use that, go get that takeout food, or go support some of our local businesses.
Absolutely. I'd like to go out and support John Foley at Foley Clothing. He's our only men's clothing place that's still open. I don't know how to do it exactly. Do I go in, or I suppose I should just drive out there and see what the deal is? But,
and with so many places, it's tricky to know who's open, who's closed, who's open but the door's locked.
It is.
Without actually going and calling them up or actually showing up and checking. Unless it's Menards. We know Menards is full.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I've tried to go to Menards in the last couple of weeks, and there's a line outside, And
it's been packed out there.
I don't want to do that because I'm me. So
no lines for you.
No lines for me. No lines for me. So so I moved ahead with. I just moved on. But I'll tell you, Nevin, what scares me, and this is the truth, is I've gone to grocery stores recently, and there's the meat sections are not full, and they seem to be rationing in some cases. That's not something I've seen in my entire life.
Yeah, and really, especially I've noticed ground beef, even for the past month, it's been kind of hit and miss with if you can get ground beef. But
I bought 5 pounds last night.
You're starting to see some kind of trickle down to the rest of the stuff, and that's just a matter of, you look at, I think they said that Tyson plant Waterloo supplies 4% of the pork. That's a huge chunk coming out from just one little plant. Not little plant, but one plant in general. So you have any disruption on 4%, let alone you start talking the other plants and, 30, 40, 50% of the people sick. That's just going to be the consequence coming through there. And it's too bad, and it's absolutely, these processing plants are essential. They're the
yes,
why
they
we
are.
have to have that. So I don't envy being in the position of the managers or whatever it may be for those plants, trying to balance, the critical component of food supply, and the other part of it is worker safety.
Well, President Trump did do away with regulations that would prevent the increase in speed in the lines. I don't know why he did that. I suppose it was if you have to keep social distancing by the president's order, how do you then speed up the line or remove any restrictions on speeding up the line? I'm not following that at all, but all I can do is like everybody else is I think we need to think together and come together on this issue because it's serious business, and pointing fingers at each other is not going to get it done.
No, and that's been one of the more frustrating parts for me, and I'm kind of in the same boat as Dr. Fisher. I was listening to him earlier on the show, where he says that he gets to the point where he feels like he just has to get away from it, and sometimes you just have to stare at nothing so that you're not bombarded by COVID, coronavirus, all this stuff, and just kind of get away because it can be overwhelming just to try to wrap your head around this thing that is unknown. So
it is unknown. That's the problem.
It's tricky.
You can't see it, taste it, smell it, but all of a sudden it's in your face.
Yep.
And who knows? I appreciate Dr. Fisher being on and talking about the 77 counties that are not on more restricted shelter-in-place rules. The 22 eastern counties are. But he did talk a lot about the packing plants and that they seem to be hot spots for whatever reason. And, of course, Prestige has done a pretty good job over there, I think.
Yeah, they've done a great job. A lot of that has to do with the way that's run over there. Jerry and his whole team do a fantastic job. It's a state-of-the-art plant, and, they do daily, even long before this, their routine is to do daily deep cleans on everything. So I think that definitely helps out. And then just the way that they were immediately on top of it. They reached out for some testing on those Black Hawk County employees, and then that led to basically their brief shutdown to do testing. So I think they did a fantastic job in terms of this. And you look at the relatively few cases that they had, and it could have been substantially worse with time. And then you compare it to some of the others where there's, 50, 60% of the whole plant's employees were testing positive. And I mean, that's a situation that, you're not talking one county, you're talking all the surrounding counties. And that's the catalyst for the huge community spread when you have a situation like that.
Yeah. We just need to work together and get all this political nonsense out of the way and have a real discussion here about what we need.
I've been thinking about this, and one, I don't know when this became a political issue because it's not a political issue. But then you think back to the same point, and is there anything that we can really put politics aside on anymore? You made the comments earlier about how we rallied after 9/11, and this country has a history of rallying in times of crisis. But you look at things now, and it's, are we too far down this partisan path where, I mean, there's got to be people like me who run the middle ground who, don't want to go all the way to the left, don't want to go all the way to the right. But it just feels like it's on most issues like this, it's an echo chamber for kind of the fringe ideas, and your average everyday citizen who sits in the middle and just wants to live their life is left out of the picture.
Yeah, it's a very difficult time, and sometimes I don't recognize my own country. What if we have a big flood or a tornado? Are we still going to point fingers? Oh, it's Trump's fault. Oh, it's Pelosi's fault. I mean, is that where we're going to go? I mean, because that's ridiculous.
That's what it looks like. I mean, it hurts to say it, but I mean, everything. It seems like every single thing turns into a political issue, and there's no reason why it should. But who knows? And maybe it's Facebook. Maybe it's this. I mean, we're in a culture of information, and unfortunately, a lot of the information that we receive isn't good information. And can that combine into this? Absolutely, and I think it definitely has. But yeah, I want some good middle of the ground leaders to pull us out of this rut that we've been in for several years.
I just like some thoughtful discussion on it. I mean, whatever. This is something that a lot of experts and ordinary people need to weigh in on. And we need to hear more stories from people who are struggling in their daily lives. The focus right now is on people who have actually contracted corona, and that's right. But we also need to get the full picture here. What sort of havoc is it going on in people's lives that do not have the coronavirus but are greatly affected by it? Because that's probably all of us.
Yeah. Even, just in my law firm, I mean, we're generally, this virus shouldn't really impact our day-to-day, but you can even see it. Everything's slowed down. People don't want to leave their homes. People don't want to come out. I mean, I can't speak to the real estate market on whether that's, keeping pace or slowing down, but from our perspective, and I think across the board, I don't think there's kind of a service or a different type of business that isn't feeling at least some form of impact from this.
Yeah, we're all feeling the impact. Yeah, it's just degrees. And again, what really bothers me is when we don't have food in the store. That's trouble. That's big trouble. Well, this is really a bummer radio station this afternoon.
Yeah, like I said, I got no solutions for you.
All right. Well, I didn't really expect you to. Nobody does. I mean, Dr. Peter Fisher doesn't have one. Ploutz doesn't have one. None of the other people. Menke had all the information, of course. But
Naturally.
Naturally. He had researched it, and he had all the information. But I saw a nice write-up about you in the paper. I had no idea you were that great a guy.
I don't know if I go that far. I woke up Tuesday morning, and I had a whole bunch of text messages saying, "Hey, I saw you in the paper," and I was like, "Oh goodness, what is that for?" Thankfully, it was for a good article. So. Front page, back page. Where are you seeing me here?
There you go. All right, Nevin, is there anything else going on over at the city that we need to know about?
I don't think so right now. Like I said, we'll have our next meeting Monday. The agenda's posted now. I was just looking this afternoon. And so if anybody's interested, go check out the agenda. It's still going to be the virtual meeting by Zoom. The instructions are on the city website, how to get into that. You can call in or log in via Zoom as well. So, and then, like I said, one of those points of discussion during the meeting is probably going to be that kind of city stimulus, trying to do what we can from a city level to help out and try to restart some of the economy and provide some incentives and get some funds back into the citizens of Fort Dodge's hands. So
now we're talking.
Look forward to having that discussion.
All right. Nevin Conrad, apparently the nicest guy in the world, has been our guest.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, thank you for calling and taking time out of your busy day, Nevin. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Have a good day.
All right. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice for Dodge.
Today on This Old But Still Nice House.
Hey, I'm going to start on getting that paint off the windowsill.
Wouldn't do that. This house was built before 1978. That's probably lead-based paint.
I don't think there's enough here to make a difference. Can't I just do it?
Sure. We can start the lead professional certification program on the Iowa Department of Public Health's website. Or we could just go to the site and find someone from their list of certified professionals.
Seriously, stop scraping. Find out what happens on the next episode of This Old But Still Nice House.
A new campaign from the Food and Drug Administration, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and Environmental Protection Agency is helping consumers understand genetically engineered foods. I'm Amy Simpson with Healthy Living on Brownfield. The Feed Your Mind initiative has several goals, according to Conrad Chanier, director of the FDA Office of Analytics and Outreach.
To help consumers understand agricultural biotechnology, what it means. We also wanted folks to have a better awareness about what the most commonly genetically engineered food crops are. And our last goal was to get folks to have a better understanding about what the federal government role is in the regulation of these products.
GMO foods have been available to consumers since the early 1990s. Since then, the FDA, USDA, and EPA have worked together to ensure the crops produced through genetic engineering are safe for people, animals, and the environment. But Chanier says there's been some confusion regarding the different terms used on labels, including GMO and bioengineered.
Whether or not a food is labeled GMO free or has the new bioengineered label, they'll understand that these foods meet the same food safety and nutrition criteria that we expect from all of our food.
I'm Amy Simpson with Healthy Living on Brownfield.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cindy Young with Brownfield Ag News. Every day, our team brings you the most relevant and timely agricultural news. Now you can listen to the week's top stories in the wrap. Call pound 250 and give the keyword Brownfield Ag News. It's as simple as that. How is COVID-19 impacting agriculture this week? Those stories and more sent right to your phone with the wrap. Dial pound 250 and use the keyword Brownfield Ag News.
We all know someone who's been touched by the opioid epidemic. Too many people have suffered opioid-related deaths. It's time to equip ourselves to make a change. Naloxone can help reverse an opioid overdose and save a life. It's safe, effective, and easy to use. If you or someone you know is at risk for an overdose, having naloxone on hand is always a good idea. For information on how to get a free naloxone kit by mail through Iowa's Telenaloxone program, visit naloxoneiowa.org. Naloxone Iowa, connecting Iowans to overdose prevention tools.
Let's do lunch. I'm Dr. Josh Mason from Active Health Clinics, and I'd like to invite you to Lunch with a Doc. It's a chance for you and a guest to talk to me about a life free of arthritic pain. All month long, we're hosting Lunch with a Doc at our office. I'll sit down with you and talk about alternative solutions to your arthritic aches and pains. It's your chance to learn and ask questions and hear patient success stories. Limited space is available, so call and set up your lunch date with me today. We're Active Health Clinics, Fort Dodge.
This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. I'm Michael Devine. I want to thank you for listening, first of all, and thank our guests so far today, Denny Plautz, of course, City Councilman Nevin Conrad, Dr. Peter Fisher with the Iowa Policy Project. Rob Jones, our news and sports director, dropped in for a little bit right off the bat. That was a great discussion. We will bring you Governor Kim Reynolds' press conference on the coronavirus, recorded earlier today, right after the news. Thanks again. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
From tuning an engine to replacing a fuse, you can learn it all under the hood. Heard every Saturday afternoon from 2 till 4 on the voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400 KVFD, Fort Dodge.
It may be over for Michael Flynn. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News. The Justice Department filing a motion to drop the criminal case against the former National Security Advisor, who's been trying to take back his guilty plea for lying to FBI agents in the Russia probe.
He was an innocent man. He is a great gentleman. He was targeted by the Obama administration, and he was targeted in order to try and take down a president.
Former FBI officials have long denied any wrongdoing. The DOJ decision follows recently revealed exculpatory evidence. President Trump also offering reassurance he continues to test negative for coronavirus after one of his valets, a Navy service member, tested positive. The comments coming during an Oval Office meeting with the Texas governor. Earlier today, the governor declaring that jail is no longer a possible punishment for violating his shutdown orders. And now Dallas mom Shelley Luther is free after being sent to jail for opening her hair salon too soon.
I just want to thank all of you who I just barely met. And now you're all my friends.
In tears after the Texas Supreme Court ordered her release today, the governor and state attorney general had criticized the lower court judge for not using greater discretion. California's governor just announcing another phase of reopening, which will include a limited array of retailers for curbside service only, not higher-risk businesses like salons and gyms. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer will let manufacturing get back to work Monday, including auto workers, but she's also extending her stay-home order to May 28th, while she's being sued by state lawmakers over an emergency order already extended.
Whitmer went to the legislature looking for an extension of the emergency declaration. The Republican-controlled House and Senate refused to extend. House Speaker Lee Chatfield says because Whitmer offered no guarantees that people's livelihoods would be restored.
Fox's Mike Tobin. America is listening to Fox News.
Americans rely on affordable, reliable package delivery from the U.S. Postal Service. It's a lifeline for rural communities. It powers our cities. But Washington politicians want to impose a massive package rate hike on the Postal Service, a 400% increase. We can't afford that these days. Quadrupling the price to send a package? That means 4 times the cost for seniors to ship their medication, 4 times to deliver household necessities, and 4 times the cost for small businesses. Unneeded rate hikes that will harm Main Street and everyday Americans. America can't afford the package tax now. Call Congress now. 202-224-3121. Tell them to stop the package tax. The Postal Service is an economic lifeline for small businesses and rural customers all over the country. That's 202-224-3121 and tell them to stop the postal rate hike. Paid for by the Package Coalition.
President Trump's veto of a war powers resolution will stand. The resolution was aimed at requiring congressional approval for most military action against Iran after President Trump ordered the airstrike that killed Iran's top general.
The Senate failed to muster the votes required for an override.
It was not part of a strategy to hurt President Trump. I've advocated these same positions, as have other members of this body under presidents who are both Democratic and Republican.
Virginia Democratic Senator Tim Kaine introduced the resolution and had support from several Republicans. The Senate's 49-44 vote in favor of overriding the veto was well short of a two-thirds supermajority needed. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
The U.S. Supreme Court tosses out the convictions of two former New Jersey officials in the so-called Bridgegate scandal. The former aides to then-Governor Chris Christie accused of creating a traffic jam as political payback against a mayor who refused to endorse the governor. The High Court ruling unanimously that no federal crime was committed and remanding the case for further proceedings with that in mind. Something for football fans to look forward to as the NFL's 2020 schedule is released, beginning at 8 Eastern tonight.
Fans can get an early look at who their teams are scheduled to play this season, when and where, 30 minutes before NFL Network will begin its 3-hour schedule release show. Teams are likely to share creative productions for their schedule releases. An email from my favorite team invited me to join for a virtual happy hour tonight presented by a popular beer company, and that I could get exclusive access to my team's schedule background for my phone. 7:30 Eastern is when your team will make a schedule available. 8 Eastern, the 3-hour network television spectacular will kick off.
Fox's Jared Max. Meantime, the delayed IndyCar season is finally set to begin June 6th in Texas, but without spectators. I'm Lisa Brady, and this is Fox News.
With your KVFD News Update, I'm Rob Jones. The 46th annual installment of Frontier Days has been canceled. The festival was originally scheduled to run June the 5th through the 7th. J-Mars Drive-In here in Fort Dodge has closed for this week. Owner Jerry Jordison has confirmed the closure is due to an employee who tested positive for COVID-19. Jordison says the last time the employee was in the restaurant was last Friday, and the employee had limited contact with other employees. As a preemptive measure, Jordison requested that all employees who had contact with the person be tested. The results of those tests are pending and should come back later this week. Jordison praised the work of local health officials who granted his request to have his employees tested. Jordison says the restaurant will remain closed the rest of this week with plans to reopen on Monday, and he says the restaurant will be thoroughly disinfected prior to reopening. A Waterloo man was arrested Wednesday on out-of-state warrants that charge him with the murder of 3 women nearly 30 years ago. Radio Iowa's Elwin Huffman with more.
Authorities accused 58-year-old Clark Baldwin of murdering 2 women in Wyoming in 1992 and a third in Tennessee in 1991. Investigators say they linked the former long-haul truck driver to the crimes after taking Baldwin's DNA from his garbage and from a shopping cart he used at a Waterloo Walmart. According to court records, the bodies of the 3 women, 2 of whom were pregnant, were all discovered either in a ditch or remote areas near interstate highways. Baldwin is being held in the Blackhawk County Jail awaiting extradition to Wyoming, where he'll be tried first. I'm Elwin Huffman, Radio Iowa, Waterloo.
Webster County Auditor Doreen Pliner has announced that there is in-person absentee voting at a new location this year. Due to the construction at the courthouse, the voting has been moved to the DHS building at 330 First Avenue North here in Fort Dodge. This absentee precinct will be open from 8 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. weekdays for absentee voting for the June 2nd primary election. Absentee ballots for the primary election can be cast at the DHS building through 4:30 p.m. on June 1st. If you have received an absentee ballot by mail and wish to return them in person, they can be returned in the drop box at the Webster County Courthouse main lobby, 701 Central Avenue here in Fort Dodge. Absentee ballots returned by mail must be postmarked by midnight on June 1st. For KVFD from the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom, I'm Rob Jones.
Here's the AM 1400 KVFD weatherology forecast. Chance for scattered showers this afternoon, otherwise cloudy skies. Daytime highs approaching 64, west winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. Isolated rain showers likely. Tonight, lows level off around 35, cloudy skies expected. Daytime highs approaching 54. Tomorrow, ample sunshine expected. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 61.
The North Central Iowa Regional Solid Waste Agency reminds you, you must be a resident of Webster County, Humboldt County, Eagle Grove, Manson, or Rockwell City to bring your garbage to the landfill. Loads from outside the area must go to their own designated landfill. Once again, to bring your garbage to the landfill, you must be a resident of Webster County, Humboldt County, Eagle Grove, Manson, or Rockwell City. This has been a reminder from the North Central Iowa Regional Solid Waste Agency, Fort Dodge, online at ncirswa.org. Follow them on Facebook, too.
Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to confess?
At AM 1400 KVFD.
Women selected. More from the Iowa Almanac in a moment.
I'm Michael Swanger, owner and publisher of Iowa History Journal. Grab some popcorn and our May-June issue with John Wayne and Donna Reed on the cover and read about the biggest movie stars from Iowa in the first of our 3-part series, Heartland to Hollywood. Discover the Iowan who famously asked, "Have you no sense of decency, sir?" Explore early Dubuque and look back at the 1918 Spanish influenza pandemic. Get your copy at Hy-Vee or by going to iowahistoryjournal.com.
The most talented basketball players dream of hearing their names called by the National Basketball Association Commissioner as part of that professional league's annual player draft. But on May 7th, 1969, a different sounding name was called. It wasn't the first player selected. This was a player selected in the 13th round, right out of Union Witten High School in Iowa. The owner of the San Francisco Warriors, Franklin Muley, told his staff to select a 5'11 player who averaged 68.2 points per game as a high school senior. That player was Denise Long, who ended her high school career with 6,250 points and became the first female ever drafted by an NBA team. Her notoriety led to an appearance on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Back when Denise Long led her Union Witten team to a state 6-on-6 championship in 1968, there weren't many options for young women who wanted to play basketball. But there was that amazing high school career and the designation of being the first female ever drafted by an NBA team on this date in 1969. And that's Iowa Almanac for May 7th. There's more online at iowaalmanac.com. Until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Stein.
Let's do lunch. I'm Dr. Josh Mason from Active Health Clinics, and I'd like to invite you to lunch with a doc. It's a chance for you and a guest to talk to me about a life free of arthritic pain. All month long, we're hosting Lunch with the Doc at our office. I'll sit down with you and talk about alternative solutions to your arthritic aches and pains. It's your chance to learn and ask questions and hear patient success stories. Limited space is available, so call and set up your lunch date with me today. We're Active Health Clinics, Fort Dodge.
Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to confess?
At AM 1400 KVFD.
It's 12 minutes after 4/4/12. We've made a commitment, of course, to carry Governor Kim Reynolds' press conferences every day at whatever time that we can. Her press conferences are usually held at 11 o'clock in the morning. So here is Governor Reynolds, courtesy of Iowa PBS YouTube site. Here's Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds' press conference from this morning.
Well, good morning. Yesterday, I was at the White House at the invitation of the President to update him, the Vice President, as well as others from the administration and the Coronavirus Task Force about Iowa's approach to COVID-19, especially as it related to our aggressive testing strategy, robust case investigation, all to contain and manage virus activity here in Iowa. I was also proud to be joined on the trip by Dr. Padati, who shared with the President and those in attendance what her and the team at the Department of Public Health are seeing in the data as it relates to virus activity. She did such a good job in answering the President's questions that during the press conference, he invited her to be a part of the Coronavirus Task Force. And one of the reasons I think that this is really exciting is because there is no representation from a state level on the coronavirus task force. And so I think that will allow kind of a state's perspective to be heard as we work through the coronavirus pandemic. So good job, and thank you for joining me there, and great work on the Department of Public Health. It was also an opportunity for me to highlight Iowa's role in feeding the nation and the world, some of the significant challenges that we faced related to that with COVID-19, as I was able to highlight 10% of the nation's food supply is produced by Iowa farmers. Nearly 80% of our workforce was essential and remained open as we moved through COVID-19. Our strong manufacturing base that's focused on food processing and supply chain, our essential workforce and infrastructure is critical to keeping the food supply chain open and moving and food on the table. We talked about the proactive measures that we're taking to protect our most vulnerable Iowans and keep essential workers safe while businesses are up and operating. The importance of PPE, the CDC and OSHA guidelines for processing plants, and the Defense Production Act. And how our strike teams are conducting surveillance testing, both diagnostic or serology of employees, sometimes both, at our long-term care facilities, manufacturing and processing plants. And how this process has really helped us identify positive cases, isolate those that are testing positive, help them get on a path to recovery, and really start to understand the scope of the virus activity and provide assurance to employees of a safe work environment while keeping our essential businesses operating safely and responsibly. We also talked about our launch of Test Iowa and the importance of our assessments and increased testing capacity, again, to help us manage virus activity, protect the health of Iowans, and get our economy back on track. In fact, I was proud to relate to the team that since March, we've actually increased our testing capacity by 800%. We were doing 300 a day in March, 1,300 on average in April, and we're averaging about 2,900 now in May. And how we're really utilizing the Iowa National Guard, the Department of Public Health, and the Department of Human Services to expand our really important case investigation team. You know, when Iowa moved to substantial spread in mid-March, we put in place targeted mitigation efforts to slow the spread, flatten the curve, to prevent overwhelming our healthcare systems. And I'm proud to say that Iowans do what they always do, and they responded. And that really gave us time to put in place our RMCCs, RMCC regions, to really collaborate with our hospital systems in each of these regions. And eventually, we were able to identify on a daily basis to Iowans the number of beds, ICU beds, and vents that were available, that were in use, and that were available. And today, we have 79% of our ICU beds available and 74% of our vents that are available for patient care. So since then, since we had kind of really accomplished what we were trying to do to make sure that we had the healthcare resources available, we now have shifted our focus from mitigation of resources to managing and containing virus activity as we begin to open Iowa back up. Another part of Iowa's response to COVID-19 has been keeping Iowans informed. And since the first positive cases of COVID-19 that were confirmed in Iowa, it's hard to believe, that was literally just about 2 months ago, we've communicated with Iowans through nearly daily press conferences. We've leveraged social media and launched a dedicated website. Our goal from the start has been to provide Iowans up-to-date information regarding COVID-19, our response, and what they could do to protect their health and the health of others. As the weeks have passed, we've worked to improve the information we provide and really how it's delivered, from reporting more information to making it more accessible. And today, I'm pleased to announce additional changes to the state website, which you can find at coronavirus.iowa.gov. That will make it easier for Iowans to, again, assess the data, access the data, and information that shows what's happening across our state. We've created a more visual dashboard that allows you to follow trends on a daily basis and filter data down to a specific day or county so Iowans can access the information that's most relevant to them. Another benefit of this change is that information will now be timelier. Currently, there's some lag time in reporting our numbers. For example, when I reported the daily numbers at Tuesday's press conference, they reflected a 24-hour time period starting the previous Sunday at 10 a.m. to Monday at 10 a.m. Now we'll be able to report cases from 12 a.m. to 11 p.m. the previous day, providing information sooner and giving you a better sense of the current situation. Because of this change in the reporting time frame, the total case counts you see on the website today now include tests reported from 10 a.m. Tuesday through 11:59 p.m. last night on Wednesday. Because of the reporting time change, all daily numbers on the site now reflect cases from 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. each day, so they will not match up with what we've previously reported. I can assure you that the numbers are accurate. They just reflect a different period of time from when we were originally reporting. I've heard many anecdotal stories about Iowans who have created spreadsheets to carefully track the numbers from day to day. So if you've been doing that, the latest change means you won't be able to reconcile your numbers with the updated information that's now on the website. But we do have a new feature that I think you'll appreciate. You can now export the data from the website to a spreadsheet or a variety of other files. And so that should make the data more functional for you. And that really is the purpose of the latest update to our website. You can also see the case counts for every day since our first positive cases. Having the ability to look back over time has been a regular request, but providing this information has not been easy until now. Providing more information to Iowans, making it easier to understand and access, and being transparent with the type of data we're using to inform our decisions. This site, it's also very interactive, which is something that I really like. And one of my favorite features is, again, the ability to drill down to cases by county. So if you click on the county, if you click on any county on the map, or even multiple counties at once, some of the data on the page updates to reflect the area that you selected. You can access also Test Iowa data, including the number of assessments completed by age and gender, and a breakdown of county. You can also continue to access data that has been regularly reported, including hospital resource data through the RMCC report and information about our long-term care outbreaks. One data item that continues to be of interest is the EPI curve, which is now represented in multiple ways on the website. And I've asked Dr. Pedati was instrumental in making that possible, so I've asked her to explain more. Dr. Pedati?
Thank you, Governor Reynolds. Again, I think when we talk about an epidemic curve or epi curve, this is one of the important ways that public health epidemiologists look at information. And this is the time element of the person, place, and time data that we use to understand a disease or a condition. And so what you'll find on the website will be another epi curve. In fact, you'll see two. And one of them is going to report total tested people by day. So that's the time element, and the other will report positive cases by day, again providing that element of time to understand trends. And that's an important part of assessing this virus and our response as we move forward. And it's an approach that we've taken in public health over the past several decades with regard to flu. It's important for us to be able to assess overarching trends at the national, state, and local levels to help us understand disease activity and where to target resources to help implement public health measures that will help keep people safe and healthy.
Thank you, Dr. Pedati. I really appreciate the work that you and the team did to make the data more meaningful for Iowans. So I hope everyone will take some time to explore the new features on the website and find what's of interest to you. So again, just go to coronavirus.iowa.gov. Data about virus activity across the state really has continued and will continue to help us drive the decisions we make about how to contain and manage it and begin to gradually reopen businesses in a responsible manner. Just as we can't stop the virus completely, we also can't keep businesses closed and our lives restricted indefinitely. And effective tomorrow, some additional restrictions will be lifted. Dentists may resume dental services in compliance with certain requirements, including those that were adopted by the dental board, and they must also have adequate inventory of PPE and a plan to conserve it. Campgrounds, drive-in movie theaters, tanning facilities, and medical spas may reopen according to business guidance from the Department of Public Health. And effective statewide tomorrow, the following businesses may open according to public health guidance. Malls at 50% capacity with common seating and play areas closed, and some retail establishments may reopen at 50% capacity as well. As we have seen this week, business owners will decide whether the time is right to reopen their doors, just as Iowans choose whether or not they will resume some of their normal activities. Regardless of our individual decisions, we must all continue to take personal responsibility for our health and the health of others by continuing to practice all preventive health measures and reduce your risk to being exposed to the virus or exposing others. Social distancing, careful hygiene practices, wearing a mask if you choose. It's how we continue to interact in public. It's how we'll continue to interact in public for some time so that we protect ourselves and those who are the most vulnerable. So again, if you're a vulnerable Iowan, 65 or older, or you have some underlying conditions, continue to stay home and to really manage your exposure to the virus. So thank you for doing your part, and with that, we will open it up for questions.
Governor, yesterday Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence, said that Iowa has been a success story. Do you agree with that? And if so, what are you basing that on? And do you believe that we've gotten over the peak?
Well, so I do think we're shifting in the way that we're talking about the virus and how we maintain it. So originally, as we talked about, our goal was to stabilize, to really make sure that we were flattening the curve, that we were slowing the spread, that we weren't overwhelming our healthcare resources. And as I said in my remarks, through the RMCC and what we've been able to do, and because Iowans really adhered to what we asked them to do with the targeted mitigation efforts, we now know the amount of ICU beds that we have available, the number of vents that we have available, the surge plans that hospitals have put in place to be prepared for an outbreak if that should happen. So I think one of the things that they talked about that we have done kind of uniquely in the state of Iowa is our aggressive testing capacity, especially with our role in manufacturing and our long-term care facilities. So by being able to provide increased testing capacities to our processing plants, both diagnostic PCR and serology testing, we are able to identify quickly the number of positive cases, the number of negative cases, isolate the individuals that are positive, get them on a path to recovery, separate the lines so we're not mixing positive individuals and those that have tested negative, as well as providing appropriate PPE, doing measures inside of the plant to continue to protect this essential workforce, and really start to understand the scope of the virus and continue to not only protect the employees, but to keep our processing plants up and moving, our manufacturing plants up and moving, to do everything we can to protect our most vulnerable in our long-term care facilities, and again, really start to mitigate some of the impact from the virus. So from that perspective, yeah, I think we're an example that other states can follow, and because of the data and the robust case investigation and tracing, that also provides us the data on how and where we need to really target our approach to get in front of some spike or some additional virus activity that we're seeing in, counties, in communities, and what that may look like and how we can be proactive in addressing that.
I think reviews of data of multiple states that we've seen on NPR and some other national publications have shown that Iowa doesn't necessarily stand out in its test capacity. Test Iowa hasn't ramped up yet, and Iowa is one of the states where the virus is spreading the fastest, including some of the communities like Sioux City that have had explosive growth in cases. So how do you...
Well, just as Dr. Burks indicated with us as well, Iowans can be proud of what we're doing. You should be proud of what we're doing. We are leading, and we're leading by example, and we're going to continue to lead. We've ramped up our testing. We've increased it by 800% since March. We are in a pandemic. We have a rapidly changing environment, and we are reacting and being proactive at the same time. When we had a chance to talk to them about how we're aggressively utilizing testing and contact tracing and working in partnership with our manufacturing facilities, they didn't understand that we were going to the hot spot and we were testing. So of course our positive cases are going to increase, and of course we're going to continue to see that. But we're also, like we did with some of the plants, we're going to identify, we're going to separate, we're going to mitigate the exposure, and we're going to be able to get them back up and increasing their capacity at these plants so that our farmers who are producing meat supply for the country and for the world can continue to do what they do and play a critical role in feeding the world. And so this is a finely oiled machine, and we have to make sure that all aspects of it are working appropriately. And so we've got farmers that are raising hogs and cattle and producing, and we got processing plants that need to be able to process. And so we need to do it responsibly and safely, and we are doing that. And so evidently, they do think that we're doing a good job. That was the comment that he made. And as I said, I thought Dr. Badati did an excellent job of talking about virus activity and how we're managing it, what we're seeing from the data, and how we're really utilizing that to be proactive in our response. And evidently she did it well enough that they thought that she should be a part of the coronavirus task force. So I think Iowans should be proud of that. And I know that I certainly am. It's not perfect, but I think we're doing everything we can to really take care of Iowans in a responsible way, but also to get this economy up and going so Iowans can get back to work, and we can do everything we can to get our lives somewhat back to normal.
Governor, you traveled out of state obviously yesterday and have chosen not to self-quarantine upon your return. Should Iowans feel safe now to travel wherever and not take that precaution?
So again, Iowans need to make those individual choices themselves. They need to apply personal responsibility, take into account where they're going, what they're doing. I didn't use commercial flight. I talked about that before I left. I took a test at arriving at the White House, an Abbott test to make sure that I tested negative. They took my temperature about every time I turned a corner. I left the White House and came back home. But again, Dave, people need to start, they have to make these personal decisions. They have to apply personal responsibility. If you are a vulnerable Iowan and you have underlying conditions, then you maybe need to rethink, your travel and probably continue to stay home and limit your trips outside of the home.
Do you believe that Governor Reynolds just said we needed to exercise personal responsibility? What a concept! Personal responsibility. I think we should wait for some expert to come along and look down his nose at us and say, this is what you should do, this is how you should dress, and this is how you should talk, and this is how you should think. I'm all in on that.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
Yeah, if you think that's far-fetched, wait till November and Biden wins. Oh.
From the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom, I'm Rob Jones. The 46th annual installment of Frontier Days has been canceled. The festival was originally scheduled to run June the 5th through the 7th. J. Mars Drive-In here in Fort Dodge has closed for this week. Owner Jerry Jordison has confirmed the closure is due to an employee who tested positive for COVID-19. Jordison says the last time the employee was in the restaurant was last Friday, and the employee had limited contact with other employees. As a preemptive measure, Jordison requested that all employees who had contact with the person be tested. The results of those tests are pending and should come back later this week. Jordison praised the work of local health officials who granted his request to have his employees tested. Jordison says the restaurant will remain closed the rest of this week with plans to reopen on Monday, and he says the restaurant will be thoroughly disinfected prior to reopening. A Waterloo man was arrested Wednesday on out-of-state warrants that charge him with the murder of 3 women nearly 30 years ago. Radio Iowa's Elwin Huffman with more.
Authorities accuse 58-year-old Clark Baldwin of murdering 2 women in Wyoming in 1992 and a third in Tennessee in 1991. Investigators say they linked the former long-haul truck driver to the crimes after taking Baldwin's DNA from his garbage and from a shopping cart he used at a Waterloo Walmart. According to court records, the bodies of the 3 women, 2 of whom were pregnant, were all discovered either in a ditch or remote areas near interstate highways. Baldwin is being held in the Blackhawk County Jail, awaiting extradition to Wyoming, where he'll be tried first. I'm Elwin Huffman, Radio Iowa, Waterloo.
28-year-old Moreland resident Tanner Lowe was sentenced to over 6 years in federal prison Wednesday for illegal possession of firearms on multiple occasions. Lowe received the sentence after pleading guilty in December to possession of a firearm by a felon. He was sentenced to 77 months in federal prison in U.S. District Court in Sioux City. There is no parole in the federal system, and Lowe will have to serve a 3-year term of supervised release after his prison sentence. He is currently in the custody of the U.S. Marshals until he's transported to federal prison. Governor Kim Reynolds has signed a proclamation allowing campgrounds, drive-in movie theaters, tanning facilities, and medical spas to reopen tomorrow. Radio Iowa's O.K. Henderson has more.
Iowa dentists will be able to perform routine procedures if their office has enough masks and other personal protective equipment. Last Friday, restaurants and other businesses were allowed to reopen in 77 Iowa counties. Social and fraternal clubs in those counties may reopen this Friday to serve food and beverages, but at 50% capacity. In the other 22 counties, fitness centers can start taking appointments and let one person in at a time to work out. Malls and other retail businesses can reopen at half capacity, too. However, restaurants in the 22 county zone must remain closed. Radio Iowa, I'm O.K. Henderson.
Webster County Auditor Doreen Pliner has announced that there is in-person absentee voting at a new location this year. Due to the construction at the courthouse, the voting has been moved to the DHS building at 330 First Avenue North here in Fort Dodge. This absentee precinct will be open from 8 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. weekdays for absentee voting for the June 2nd primary election. Absentee ballots for the primary election can be cast at the DHS building through 4:30 p.m. on June 1st. If you have received an absentee ballot by mail and wish to return them in person, they can be returned in the drop box at the Webster County Courthouse main lobby, 701 Central Avenue here in Fort Dodge. Absentee ballots returned by mail must be postmarked by midnight on June 1st. That's your Alpha Media News Update from the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom. I'm Rob Jones.
This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. It's 4:36. We'll continue with the governor's press conference in just a couple of minutes. Right now in the weather, ladies and gentlemen, well, it's 61 degrees, and we'll probably have rain after 5 o'clock, mostly cloudy. Other than that, overnight, some showers, cloudy during the early evening, clearing toward morning with a low of 35 degrees. That's pretty cool. On Friday, tomorrow, sunny with a high of 55, going to be windy. Saturday, a good chance of rain, widespread frost early in the morning. Otherwise, mostly sunny with a high of 64. On Sunday, sunny with a high of 55. Monday, some frost early, otherwise mostly sunny with a high of 58. Tuesday, sunny with a high of 58. And on Wednesday, a 40% chance of showers, mostly cloudy with a high of 63. Right now, 61 degrees at AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. Obituaries this hour brought to you by the historic Bruce Funeral Home at 923 First Avenue South in Fort Dodge. You may contact the historic Bruce Funeral Home by calling 515-576-5117 or online at www.brucesfuneralhome.com. Dan McCool, formerly of the Clarion area, has passed away. He was 60 years old. He died on May 4th. Dan was best known as a prolific writer of high school wrestling and college wrestling in the state of Iowa. He really carried the message and captured the heart and soul of what wrestling is to our state. Dan McCool, gone way too soon at the age of 60, originally from Clarion. Dan McCool has passed. Obituaries this hour brought to you by the historic Bruce Funeral Home at 923 First Avenue South, Fort Dodge. You may contact the historic Bruce Funeral Home by calling 515-576-5117 or online at www.brucesfuneralhome.com. 438 at AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge, 61 degrees.
Here's a look at how the markets closed today. May corn up 4 1/4 at $3.16. July up 3 3/4 at $3.18. September up 3 cents at $3.23 1/4, and December up 2 3/4 at $3.34. May soybeans closed up 11 cents at $8.41 1/2. July up 11 3/4 at $8.44 1/4. August up 11 at $8.45. September up 10 1/4 at $8.44 3/4. May wheat closed up 4 1/4 at $5.29. Soybean meal up 50 cents a ton at $2.8360. June live cattle up the 450 limit to close at 93.97. August up 450 at 99.95. May feeders up 617 at 130.27. August up 540 at 138.15. May lean hogs up 70 cents at 68.80. June down 167 at 63.90. I'm Dwayne Murley.
I'm Liz Clayman, and this is the Fox Business Report.
Stocks finishing higher as record jobless claims showed signs of easing and more states began reopening their economies. Gains from tech stocks lifting the NASDAQ today, with the index now in positive territory for the year. With the Dow rising 211 points, the NASDAQ up 125, S&P 500 up 33. And after the closing bell, Uber reporting earnings and suffering a near $3 billion loss for the quarter as the ride-hailing industry suffers from the coronavirus pandemic. Uber's saving grace at this time may be its food delivery business. Its Uber Eats bookings were up more than 50% year over year. And as many companies are suffering during the coronavirus pandemic, Papa John's says its pizzas and new flatbreads were flying out of its kitchens during the month of April, driving record sales and notching its best month in the company's history. Papa John shares closing up 5% today. That's your Fox Business Report. I'm Hillary Barsky, invested in you.
Time's running out to win $5,000 a week for life from Publishers Clearinghouse. Enter now at PCH.com and you could win $5,000 a week after week, for life. Don't miss your chance to win, because $5,000 a week for life is ready to be awarded on June 30th. Enter at PCH.com before it's too late. That's PCH.com. Better hurry if you want the next big winner to be you. Enter now at PCH.com. Entries due 6/25. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited.
Paid for by Bank on Yourself.
Would you get on an airplane if you knew it had a 50% chance of crashing? You may be riding that plane right now. If you have your money in a 401k or IRA and you plan to take out the recommended percentage each year when you retire, your chance of running out of money is 50%. 50%. But there's a better and safer way to secure your income in retirement. Discover how in a free book called Rescue Your Retirement. This wealth building strategy has never had a losing year in more than a century. In fact, even the man who invented the 401k now prefers this method instead. Get Rescue Your Retirement free for just a small shipping charge and enjoy a safe landing and a comfortable retirement. Get this free book and make sure you don't run out of money. Hurry, this offer is extremely limited. To get your free copy, just go to growwealthsafely.com. That's growwealthsafely.com to discover how to rescue your retirement. growwealthsafely.com.
When you go to the mechanic in here...
Pass me the torque. Nope, let me have the flamethrower.
That sounds wrong. You know what else sounds wrong? When you hear about the interest you're earning on your savings with the largest banks. But with the Markets by Goldman Sachs online savings account, you could earn much more interest. And hear this. Open a Marcus by Goldman Sachs online savings account in minutes at Marcus.com. You can money.
Comparison made to the three largest U.S. banks measured by total deposits. Rates as of February 4th, 2020 and may vary by state. Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC.
Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to confess?
That AM 1400 KVFD.
Plant situation.
Yeah.
I know the governors of Nebraska and South Dakota have said that among meat packing plant workers, they live in close proximity, and perhaps some of the spread is among the community itself and has nothing to do or little to do with where they work. Do you agree with that concept of of the rapid spread among people who live closely together. Obviously, I think a lot of people believe it started at the meatpacking plant, but what's your take on that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's another example of a place where we've continued to learn more about this virus, and we're going to continue to do so. So just like when we think about the spread of other diseases, other bacteria or viruses, we think about opportunities for those kinds of things to happen. And we know about this virus that being in close personal contact is one of the risk factors for allowing this virus to move from one person to another. And that's why a lot of the recommendations that we've made are really focused on ways to limit that interaction and limit those opportunities. And so I think taking everything together, we certainly know people who live in households might be spending time in close proximity. And if there are other opportunities or places where people might potentially be in close proximity, that's exactly why we're trying to reinforce, older people and people with underlying conditions should not be in those situations and should be still staying home. And also reinforcing things like social distancing and the use of cloth face coverings in public if you're unable to maintain that kind of distance. And so regardless of the setting, I think keeping in mind that what we know biologically is that being in close contact is a potential risk that helps us guide the recommendations and public health control measures that we put in place in a variety of settings.
Governor, I think part of that was to basically say that regardless of what the meatpacking plants did to protect their workers, the virus may have spread anyway.
And absolutely, as Dr. Badati just said, it's in households, that's where we're seeing significant spread. I think, just the fact even with the Governor Cuomo, when he was doing his press conference yesterday, one of the things that he reported out was that 66% of the hospitalization came from individuals who had sheltered because they were sheltered in or had sheltered in. And so, we learn every day. So we are seeing it spread within households, especially generational, but with the large households. And we're seeing it also then when they go to work in close proximity like that, it tends to spread as well.
Can we assume from that there's maybe a broader change of thinking now that the restrictions we did may not be, either weren't necessary or aren't necessary for the future based on what you're learning about the virus?
Yeah, well, so what, kind of that's what I was saying in the remarks. I think originally it really was about protecting Iowans. There were so many unknowns, and it was about managing our resources. The early projections were like, thousands of Iowans were going to be impacted, hospitalized, the number of deaths, the number of potential vents that would be needed. So we just didn't know, and we didn't have a good understanding of what our resources were. So while 80% of our businesses were up and going and remained working because of our essential workforce, we did put targeted mitigation efforts in place. And by doing that, really kind of limiting the activity, asking for social distancing, closing down some of our non-essential businesses, and Iowans really responded. They did a great job. And because of that, that bought us time so that we could put in place the infrastructure and the system to understand where those vents and beds and ICU beds were at, not only from a state perspective, but from a regional perspective. And I think now that we've done that, and now that we've seen based on Iowa data what some of our numbers are, and so we're changing our strategy, I think, about how we look at this, like we do with the flu, kind of like Dr. Padati said. So we're looking at containing and managing, which allows us to continue to open up in a very safe and responsible way. We're not opening them up at full capacity. Most everything is at 50% capacity. We're asking them to still social distance. We're still limiting social gatherings to 10 or fewer. So, we're doing it in a responsible manner, and Iowans need to continue to be mindful. But I think we need to also, that allows us to move to the next phase and really start to open up and realize that we can do that in a responsible and safe manner. And I've been so impressed with the businesses and the churches and everybody. They really are being very responsible. They're making their decisions on whether they're ready to open up, if that's the right thing for them to do and how they're doing it. They're paying a lot of attention and utilizing the Department of Public Health's guidance that they have put in place for them to kind of walk through when they're thinking about reopening. And so my hope is, as we continue to watch the trends and monitor the virus activity, that we can continue to to open things back up as we move forward.
Aaron Murphy, Lee News, go ahead.
Thank you, Governor. You've occasionally mentioned the serology testing. I think you did earlier again today here. Can you? I'm just wondering if you would be willing to tell us a little bit more about that specific kind of testing, just how and where the state is conducting that, and where that type of test specifically fits into the bigger picture of informing the decisions you make.
Yeah, so that was another aspect that we got to really highlight at the meeting with the president and team yesterday, and I'll have Dr. Padati give you some more details, but we've been using it at some of our processing plants, and we've also been using it with our long-term care facilities. And I'll let Dr. Padati talk about kind of what we're gathering from those testing options.
Thank you. So again, I think that what we've seen in the several months that we've been responding to this new virus is that we continue to learn more and continue to adjust our response, which is a critical thing to be is flexible in adjusting the way that public health, laboratory, and clinical partners respond to things as we learn more. And I think that that's something that we'll continue to do as we monitor virus activity. And one of the things that we've continued to look at are other ways to gain insight into what that activity might be. And so a test like a serologic test, which looks for the presence of antibodies, is one potential way to understand people who might have been exposed but perhaps didn't realize it or weren't tested. And remember, we've seen about 80% of people who have been infected with this virus have either had no symptoms or been very mildly ill, with about 20% of people, having more severe outcomes. And those are those people with underlying conditions and older people who are really trying to protect and make sure that we optimize outcomes for by putting systems in place and partnering with our clinical partners. And so a tool like serology might help us understand a little bit more about the patterns and activity level of this virus. And it's something that we still need to learn a bit more about because we need to understand if you detect those antibodies, are they working to protect you? We need to understand that. And how long do they work to protect you? Because we know that there are some diseases that you can be immune to for a lifetime, and others where it may only last a couple of months or somewhere in between. And so it's an example of a place again that we continue to learn more, but it's something that we've offered as a way to help again understand a little bit more about the trends of this virus here in Iowa, and it's something that we're going to continue to work again with our partners throughout the state on to help understand how we can direct resources and make decisions that make the most sense for Iowans for how we live, work, and interact.
Chris, KCCI.
Hi there. Got a two-pronged question, but I think it should be pretty quick answers. What specific data points were used to guide the reopening decisions announced yesterday? And where exactly does Iowa rank among the 50 states in terms of testing rates?
So again, some of the criteria that we used, again, remember we're shifting strategy, so we now have identified that we have the resources available to take care of Iowans in the case that they would need to be hospitalized or we saw some type of a surge. And so we're looking at virus activity and virus trend. And so that allows us to start to look at various communities, start to open up Iowa and continue to move forward with those efforts based on what we're seeing across the state. So, and it's not just a snapshot of time. We're looking at trends. We're looking at it a 3-day, a 14-day. We're looking at positivity rates. We're looking at hospitalization. We're looking at a variety of things. But I think really we do, as we think about how we start to open up the state, it is about containing and managing the virus so that we can early on with the data that we're seeing on a daily basis, really start to identify where we're seeing some activity, where we're potentially seeing some clusters of increased activity. And that allows us to get in and just to maybe do additional testing so we'll know what is the scope of the virus that's happening there within the community. It may mean that we need to get into the community and provide them some additional education to just say we're seeing a little bit of a flare up, so be mindful about that. If you aren't feeling well, if you're a vulnerable Iowan, I think it's really important that you stay in and protect yourself. And so those are some of the things different ways that we can help manage this as we move forward.
Great.
I can't remember the other question.
We're going to go to Nick at the Morning Register.
Yeah, thank you, Governor.